I don't think he's the only guy that doesn't believe in attorneys. That's all right. You guys aren't half as bad as engineers. That's great.
Don't forget your microphone's up.
Mechanical ones from UF are fine. They're good. It's a different species.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Marion County Board of County Commissioners, I'd like to welcome you to our first meeting in the month of March. We're happy to see so many with us here today. If you'll please stand with me, Commissioner Moore is going to lead us in the invocation and pledge.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we come into your presence through the power shed blood of Jesus Christ. Dear Lord, it's through you and you alone we have access to the throne room of heaven, dear Lord. Dear Lord, right now we just ask your blessings upon the meeting today, dear Lord. Give us your leading wisdom and guidance. Help us to make the right decisions, dear Lord. Help us to know what your will is and to do your will, Lord God. And help us to do what is best for the people of Marion County. Dear Lord, and everything that's said and done here today, may you get the honor, glory, and praise. Thank you for each person that's taken the time to show up to the county commission to put their voice in so we can hear from the people, because we're out there each day talking to people, but it's also great when people come up here and just show up to see their government in action and actually participate, Lord God. Dear Lord, protect our troops, protect our first responders as they go about keeping us safe each day, and bless each person here this morning. May you get the honor, glory, and praise in all we say and do when we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Madam Clerk, if you'll please call roll.
Yes, ma'am. Chairman Stone.
Here.
Vice Chairman Moore.
Here.
Commissioner Bryant.
Here.
Commissioner Gold.
Here.
Commissioner Zalek.
Here.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Let me quickly go through our announcements this morning, but before I do so, just for housekeeping purposes, I'd like to again welcome you and ask if you have any electronic items on you, if you will please put them to vibrate or turn them off. If you do need to take a call or if you need to have a conversation, I will ask that you please take it out of the auditorium out of respect for the speakers and the process of this meeting. As we go through this agenda item this morning, we will go through general public comments, a public hearing at 10 a.m., and our consent agenda. If you would like to follow along with us, you may do so at Marion County's website, which is www.marioncountyflorida.org. If you wish to have anything placed on the agenda, you may do so by the Friday before each board meeting. Anyone who requires accommodations due to a disability or a physical impairment should contact Marion County's administration at 352-438-2300. We ask that you do that at least 2 days before our meeting. The Marion County Clerk of Court keeps the official minutes and the audio recordings of our commission meeting and workshops and public hearings. To request a copy of these materials, you may contact the clerk's office at 352-671-5622. Marion County also offers video recordings of most of our board meetings, workshops, and public hearings. And for information about video recordings, you can call our county administration office, and again, that number is 352-438-2300. Again, this is the first meeting of our month. Let me rephrase that. This is our first meeting for the month of March, and we are meeting on Thursday versus our normal Tuesday meeting. We will have a 10 a.m. public hearing this morning to consider the second modification to the Ocala Crossing South Planned Unit development. On March the 19th at 9 a.m., we will have our regularly scheduled commission meeting, which takes place the third Tuesday of every month. On March the 19th, we have several other meetings. as well in the afternoon. The first one is at 1:50, and that is a meeting to convene the Marion County Community Redevelopment Area Board. That meeting will take place in this auditorium. On the 19th at 2 p.m., we will hold our regularly scheduled zoning and planning meeting. And on that same afternoon, March the 19th at 2 p.m., or as soon as thereafter, we will consider a road closure petition associated with Stonecrest Center Phase 4 of the partial replat. So again, thank you all for being with us. I hope that you'll please adhere to those requests by keeping your conversations outside of the auditorium. And now we'll go into our proclamations and presentations.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bryant, second by Commissioner Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. And Commissioners, if you'll please join me around front, we will be, well, excuse me, my agenda has been redesigned just a little bit from the one I first started with. Our first presentation this morning will be from Mr. Scott Quintel from the United Way of Marion County, and he will be presenting our Public Policy Institute Homeless Study Report. And thank you for joining us this morning, Mr. Quintel.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Stone and fellow commissioners and leadership of Marion County. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to come before you and present the results of the Public Policy Institute study on homelessness, The Long Way Home. In fact, I've got a little presentation here, so we'll bring that up on the monitor as well. Before I go into the recommendations of that study, what I would like to do is to thank Marion County, the City of Ocala, the Ocala Police Department, and United Way of Marion County for their support of the completion of this study, both with time and energy as well as financially. Additionally, I would like to share with you that outside of the local involvement in this study was a little bit unique in that some of those partners, Marion County government included, commissioned the Florida Housing Coalition to do a report as well that is included in this study. So I think it's unique that we have both the local perspective, which has key information and expertise about the issues in Marion County, but it also includes the input of an external organization that sees how these same things happen in other parts of the state. So I think that strengthens the study as a whole. And so let me go into the 8 recommendations we have. I will move through them rather quickly so that we have some time for conversation if you have any questions. The first recommendation that was in the Public Policy Institute study had to do with leadership of the homelessness efforts in Marion County, and that recommendation was to restructure the lead agency and HMIS roles of the continuum of care to improve the performance of that continuum. One of the instances that was seen in the study is that locally we have a lead agency that leads the continuum of care, but they are also a direct service provider. And so that while that does happen in some locations in the state of Florida, it is seen as a best practice that you don't have one organization performing both of those roles. And so that is a key part of this first recommendation, is to have those roles bifurcated into having 2 separate organizations doing that work. The Florida Housing Coalition study went a step further, and they suggested 2 options or strategies that Marion County could look at as we look to make this change. The first of those would be to continue with the Marion County Homeless Council as the lead agency and HMIS lead, and them cease to provide the direct services that they currently provide in Marion County. Option B from the Florida Housing Coalition was to create a joint city-county office on homelessness that could serve as the COC lead and the HMIS lead, and keep the Marion County Homeless Council providing the direct services, which is a strong suit of what they do. They're actually one of our best direct service providers here in Marion County. Recommendation number 2 in the study, also around leadership, is to build the membership and engagement of the Marion County Continuum of Care Board of Governors so they can provide stronger leadership in addressing the homelessness efforts. It's about having the right people at the table with the decision-making ability and the authority to make change. It's also making sure that is a group of individuals that are engaged, that are at the table, that are active. You certainly don't, if you have any issues where you're not having a quorum or if you're not having all the members actively actively engaged, it limits the ability for that body to have impact and lead the efforts in the community. So it was identified in the study that there's room for improvement and strengthening in that leadership body. Recommendations 3 through 6 that I'm about to go through all have to do with plan and having a plan of how we address homelessness here in Marion County. And so that's kind of the second section of the recommendations. Recommendation 3 specifically is to create and expand outreach to homeless individuals. And so a couple of the key ways that were identified that can be done is to administer screening tools to all homeless individuals that they come in contact with in Marion County, and also to specifically target our outreach to chronically homeless individuals in Marion County. Chronically homeless individuals are individuals that are seen as being homeless for more than a year or for 4 separate occurrences in a 3-year period of time. And studies show that typically the chronically homeless will utilize 50 to 60% of all the resources directed towards homelessness within the community. So it's a key population to try and address as we move forward. There have been steps taken in the last 12 to 24 months. Specifically, the City of Ocala has a homeless services or a community services liaison. The gentleman's name is Dennis Yantz. I think many of you know Dennis. Dennis is active and out on the streets on a regular basis, engaging with the homeless, finding out what their circumstances are, and in many instances he has been successful in getting them connected back to their support networks, getting them off of the streets into housing and connected to those that can assist them. While he has been doing a fantastic job, there's identified that we have a need for larger capacity in that area. So expanding those efforts of what he's doing, having more individuals who can provide those services will help us further reduce the homeless population. Recommendation number 4 is about creating a central access point for comprehensive services for homeless individuals and families. This would be a place where many types of services can be accessed to better meet the needs of the homeless. It can be educational opportunities, it can be employment opportunities, health care, something as simple as having the Bureau of Motor Vehicles be there to issue driver's license, Social Security Administration to provide Social Security cards and Social Security numbers to individuals that may not have proper identification. For folks like you and I to go to the various locations around Marion County that we need to visit, that's pretty easy for us to do. For this population, though, not having all of those services co-located can be a significant barrier for them to being able to access those services and get the services that they need. A central access point can, in addition to being a hub for those, it can also be a hub for the outreach services that we mentioned that need to be expanded. One of the other conversations in Marion County has been about where do homeless individuals go during the daytime, because there's very limited places. In fact, a lot of the emergency shelters, they're not allowed to stay during the daytime. So a central access point could also potentially serve as a day center, which would reduce loitering and vagrancy that we sometimes see within the county, especially in the downtown area. Recommendation number 5 is to strengthen the coordinated entry process to ensure that that process is more highly utilized by service providers to meet the needs of the homeless. So in a well-functioning COC, you will have a uniform process that anyone who is in need of housing will enter into. They will receive an assessment through a tool that's called the VI SPDAT, and they will then be ranked as far as priority of the services they need. While that is taking place at a level in Marion County, it was identified in our study that some of our homeless service providers are not fully participating in that coordinated entry process. We have some that utilize that entirely. We have other organizations that utilize it on a partial basis, and then we have some providers that do not participate in coordinated entry at all. If we want to fully and most effectively address homelessness in Marion County, it's going to require us to work with those partners to bring folks together and make sure that we're better utilizing that coordinated entry process. That also would include the implementation of diversion practices, so folks that are at risk of becoming homeless can be diverted to other resources so they don't actually literally become homeless. We talked about increasing the agency participation. It also would be helpful to integrate shelter and transitional housing programs into that coordinated entry process. Some of the organizations that we have providing those services in Marion County are fully privately funded, and so they have their own processes for how they determine intake intake and who will come into their facilities. So again, the process could be strengthened if we're having one method rather than having organizations use side door entry into housing services. Recommendation number 6 is to increase the utilization of best practices by providers of direct services for their source of funding. So some of the things that were discussed about were lowering the barriers for emergency shelter and transitional housing programs. One of the other models that got a lot of conversation during the study was the Housing First model. It is a model that has been proven in other parts of the country, specifically in the state of Utah, to be very effective in addressing homelessness by getting folks into housing initially with no barriers, not making any requirements or contingencies that the individual needs to meet to be moved into housing. The data shows that once you get those folks housed, you can then start to work on other issues they may have, such as substance abuse, such as mental health issues, such as employment requirements. Those items can be better addressed once the individual is housed, and then because of addressing them in that order, those individuals, you'll have a higher percentage of folks that retain their housing 12 and 24 months after they receive initial services. So a lot of discussion around that Housing First model. That is an area that we saw where there could be a lot of growth in Marion County, is service providers utilizing that model to serve the population and then be more effective. The last two recommendations have to do with funding, and it's not specifically about increasing funding, although I will talk about that in a moment. It's really about how we utilize some of the funding we have in place. Marion County Community Services, your department led by Cheryl Martin, can be a big player in this arena as we look at making sure we have the capacity in Marion County that we need to address the homeless issue. Recommendation number 7 is about identifying and funding and expanding permanent supportive housing in Marion County. Permanent supportive housing pairs case management with supportive services. The individuals we talk about with permanent supportive housing, the ideal candidate, are individuals who have been chronically homeless, again, homeless for over a year or more than 4 times in the last 3 years. They typically will have a disability, whether that's mental or physical, and they're in a situation that at least for an indefinite term, they are not going to be able to live independently. They're going to need some sort of supportive services. What permanent supportive housing does is it moves them into a facility where, in addition to having a roof over their head, having lights that turn on, food in the refrigerator, they're receiving case management services for the assistance that they need. What research shows is that by even having a subsidy that's provided to them for their housing, and there's a community cost for that, it is much less expensive to move folks into permanent supportive housing than it is for them to utilize the services they do as homeless, specifically our healthcare systems, going to the emergency room for any medical issues that they have, and utilizing the criminal justice system, because a lot of these individuals are in and out of the criminal justice system. They're in jail. There's court costs that are involved. So by increasing the permanent supportive housing as a community, we can actually better serve that population and lower our costs of what it takes to serve that population and be a better use of community resources. Additionally, as it pertains to permanent supportive housing, we have identified that in Marion County, there are currently less than 10 units for permanent supportive housing. The Florida Housing Coalition study identified a need of approximately 200 units of permanent supportive housing based on our homeless population. I will tell you that since the completion of this study and in the final phases of this study, there was a lot of conversation already happening about how we can build that capacity, how we can identify more units for permanent supportive housing, but those conversations are going to need to continue. Recommendation 8, the final recommendation from the study, is to shift resources from sheltering and transitional housing to rapid rehousing efforts. So data that we looked at, one of the key pieces is there's something called the HIC count, H-I-C, it's the Housing Inventory Count. And the data that we have in Marion County shows that there are times of year where our shelters are not at capacity, which means we're spending resources to have sheltering capacity there that is not being utilized. And by redirecting some of those resources into rapid rehousing, we can more effectively meet the needs of the homeless population. Rapid rehousing looks like a situation where someone is housed in a long-term facility, so typically they're having a lease on a house, they're having a lease on an apartment, it's not a motel week to week, it's not staying in their car, it's not staying in an emergency shelter, but as they move into that housing, they're receiving some subsidy of that. So let's say, for example, an individual family, single mother with 3 kids moves into housing. Perhaps in the first few months that she's in that housing, her entire rent is going to need to be paid for her. But as she develops educational opportunities, as she builds employment, then maybe at the month, let's say 3 or 4 month mark, now she's in a point where she's able to pay 25% of her rent, only 75% is being subsidized. As she gets closer to the 8th or 9th month mark, now it's 50%. And over the course of a 12 to 24 month period, you transition this individual to paying the full cost of their rent, the full cost of all their living expenses. And again, data shows that by taking on a model like that, by working with the individual over time and providing that assistance, you have a much more successful rate of families being able to maintain their housing, being financially stable, and being able to sustain all their own needs at the end of that support, rather than transitioning back into a state of homelessness where the process would start again with multiple other services.
Sure.
When we look at that from a funding standpoint,
Scott?
yeah.
Sorry, I just have one question.
Sure.
What is our time of year generally that our shelters are not at capacity?
I don't have that information right in
Okay.
front of me, but I can certainly follow up with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'll get that to, I'll send it, share
All
it,
of us.
and then we can get it to all the commissioners. As it pertains to rapid rehousing, we currently spend about $228,000 here in Marion County in that effort. When we look at the Florida Housing Coalition study, they identified that to fully meet the need, that's going to need to be around $500,000, about $500,000, so about double what we're currently spending. And that's also been part of the conversation that we've had with funders within the community, with direct service providers, is how can we shift some of those resources. It's not just about finding new resources to meet that need, but are we using our existing resources effectively, and how can we transition how some of those dollars are being spent. I will share just from my standpoint, my organization, we provide both some rapid rehousing dollars to organizations in the community. We also provide a lot of dollars for emergency or transitional sheltering, and we're going to be looking at in this year how we maybe transition some of that and how we repurpose some of those dollars so we can better align with the recommendations here in the study. Outside of those 8 recommendations, 2 additional things I'd like to mention to you. As we went through this study, one of the things that was identified, we looked heavily at the efforts in Miami-Dade County. In fact, there were a number of folks, both from the city and the county, Commissioner Stone, Monier, Cheryl Martin, and others from the county, as well as folks from the city, John Zobler, Dennis Yantz, Melanie Gabordi, took a trip for a day and a half down to Miami-Dade, and we looked at their efforts because they have had a lot of success in addressing their homeless population. One of the advantages that they have over many other communities is they have a reoccurring funding source. They have a beverage tax of 1% that generates millions of dollars a year to address the homeless need in their community. Now, also understand Miami-Dade County is a little bit bigger than we are, so even with a tax of that size, we wouldn't see the same return. But and I don't want you to think I'm proposing a tax or recommending a tax, but I simply want to say this, that it was identified in the study that having a reoccurring funding stream of some sort would be beneficial in addressing the homeless need. It was beyond the scope of our study to identify what a funding stream might be, how that would work, or where those dollars would come from. It is just simply that we would like to point out that as we looked at best practices, we can see that there is some merit of reoccurring revenue assisting in this process. Finally, the last item before I've got an individual I would like to introduce to you as well is just that we set a goal with this study that we think if these recommendations are implemented, that we can reduce the homeless population by 60% in the next 5 years. And so it is the hope of the Public Policy Institute and those that participated in this study that we can continue community conversation, we can look at these recommendations of how we can operate more effectively, and we can serve one of the most vulnerable populations that we have here in Marion County. So I appreciate the time to share these recommendations with you. The last thing I would like to do is introduce to you the chair of the Public Policy Institute, Mr. Jerome Gamble, so he can come up and share some comments from the Public Policy Institute board.
Thank you, Mr. Quintel, and welcome, Mr. Gamble. If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Jerome Gamble, and I live at 2350 Southeast 110th Street, Ocala. thank you so much for allowing Scott and I to offer a few comments regarding the Public Policy Institute study. We believe that the work that has been done will provide a roadmap that will guide our community to significant enhancements on the lives of those who are homeless in our community. We believe that the unified and coordinated effort of the government, city, county, and federal, combined and coordinated with the efforts of private and religious organizations in our community, can provide a new way for us to serve a segment of our population in new and innovative ways. The homeless study brought together a very broad spectrum of our community to address the needs of the homeless population. And our plea today is that we will continue and strive to work together to meet the goals of reducing or eliminating homelessness in Ocala and Marion County. But in the process of eliminating homelessness, we must do much more than provide a place for people to live. These efforts must be surrounded by other efforts to serve this population on a social and financial level. Our prayer is that we will develop new levels of social, financial services, and job opportunities that will make more than a temporary fix, but a long-term solution to homelessness and affordable housing in our community. We believe that Ocala and Marion County is on the verge of a new day in serving the homeless population. And our prayer is that we will continue to work together to enhance the lives of those who are homeless and destitute in our community. And we're confident that the lives of all of the citizens of our community will be enhanced by the work that has been done. We have brought with us today a few copies of the study that we will give to those who are interested in obtaining copies of the study that was completed. We also have with us today some representatives of the Public Policy Institute. We have Tony James with us, Craig Curry, and Becky Lynn, who have also been a part of this work. And we certainly want to thank you, Commissioner Stone, and this entire commission for all of the support that you have given to this effort. It's important in our community, and we dare not fail. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Gamble, and I appreciate members of your PPI board being with you. Before you sit down, I believe Commissioner Moore.
I just want to say thank you to Pastor Gamble, because they're saying Mr. Gamble, but that's Pastor Gamble. You know, give him.
Mistake.
Yeah, but he's Pastor Gamble, and he has done a wonderful work over there in Mount Canaan. So thank you, sir, for your work. And then Pastor Tyrone Oliver. I assume you know Pastor Tyrone, but there are people that have been just really, you know, not just getting up here and saying, hey, we're part of this. They're actually out there on the ground doing it. So thank you for your work, sir.
I definitely know there's a lot of great work being done in our community, but I think we have an opportunity to do even more. And I want to, again, thank the Public Policy Institute Board for bringing this topic forward and for the fine work that's been done by Mr. Quintel and all the many community volunteers that participated in bringing this study into fruition. Yes, Commissioner Moore?
Because I tried to hold my questions at the end, but sure. On the first one, recommendation where you had the A and the B.
Correct.
If we went with option B, where we let them continue providing services, and we did a city county, would that be Bellevue, all 5 municipalities?
So that would cover all of Marion County. Yeah. So the continuum of care that we discuss is set up at a federal government level. One of the things that, for brevity, I didn't get into, and I'll try to keep it short here, is that to bring in state and federal dollars to address homelessness through Department of HUD, federally, DCF, statewide, you must have a continuum of care body. That's the mechanism for those dollars to flow in. In some communities, it's a multi-county continuum of care. Here in Marion County, I think in part because of the large size of Marion County, we are a single county continuum. So anything that we talk about there as far as the continuum of care would serve all of Marion County.
But my question is more, how would we set it up? Because, City of Ocala, City of Bellevue, Denell and the McIntosh Raddick, what did you look at how to set up a board that would have Marion County plus the different municipalities and how, okay.
Actually, as the representative to the
Right.
board for the continuum of care, we do have representation from around the county. I can't say we have anyone from all aspects, but we fund items that are, or programs that are taking place around. I do, just to kind of step in, I do believe that the city is going to request a joint workshop for us in the future.
Then we can deal with it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key things in my comments in with what Commissioner Stone is saying. The study, I think, gives us a lot of good information. It started a conversation, and exactly where we go and how we implement these recommendations is a conversation that will continue. So, as Michelle is saying, if that's where we go is with a joint county-city conversation through a workshop, I think that would be a strong piece of the conversation.
Okay, yeah, because that,
I think when we look at it too, right, I mean, I think both the funding mechanisms come into Marion County and also the city of Ocala. I don't think the other cities are actually getting the
They don't
funding
get federal
they don't get the
dollars.
federal dollars, obviously, and I think all of this, well, not all of the services, obviously, but a fair number of the services are actually mostly provided within the city limits.
So there are a number
Right.
of services that are provided both with some of those federal dollars outside the city limits. Shepherd's Lighthouse in Bellevue has been a strong participant in the past. But there are also, and it's key to this whole conversation about partnership and being inclusive, there are a number of services in Marion County that operate with private dollars, not just state and federal dollars, that need to be at the table and need to be a part of that conversation. And so the membership, in addition to the Board of Governors of the Continuum of Care, the membership is also very important, and that membership, back to your point, Commissioner Moore, includes a number of individuals that are outside of Ocala or the central part of Marion County, representing the other parts of the community.
I just appreciate if I may.
Sure.
I really appreciate the team and work that you guys have all put together to try to bring this whole thing, because there's so many people out there doing such great work,
Right.
but it's, it is a little bit scattered, right? And so if I think that, as the pastor mentioned before, and the team has been mentioning, I think one of the things that we've really needed to do is kind of bring it to a focus and figure out how we can, every one of us can do that piece in an effective and efficient way so that we can actually bring increasing results, right? I think it's time for us to relook at that, and I really appreciate the Public Policy Institute and hopefully, what our little bit of funding did to help get it to a place where we can start to take action. Thank you, Madam Chair.
As this was started, Ron Book from Miami-Dade, the chair of the Homeless Trust there, he said you need three things to address homelessness effectively. You need to have leadership, you need to have a plan, and you need to have funding.
Right.
Well, we have funding already that flows in. That's not to say it's completely can meet the need, but we need to make sure we have the right leadership in place, and we need to make sure we have a plan to follow. And I think that with the PPI study and the work of the Public Policy Institute on this, we've got a stronger plan than what we've had in the past that we can follow as we look to address homelessness.
And we've already had some one-on-one conversations with staff individually. I think as we go forward that we'll be able to bring that to the joint meeting whenever we get that scheduled. So I'm expecting that there's going to be a lot more talk about that.
Well, thank you again for your time this morning. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Scott. And Commissioner,
Mr.
I would
Boyne,
like to
yes.
add one thing. I had Cheryl Morton come around and met with you one-on-one and shared with you a few ideas specifically regarding option B under recommendation number one. Those ideas are being discussed with the city. They have been presented to the city, but further conversation needs to take place, and I believe the workshop will give us a more concrete direction. What do you want us to do?
Okay. Good. All right. Well, thank you. And again, we appreciate those that were here this morning and the work that's been done to bring us this report. Our next presentation this morning is recognition of employees who volunteered for United Way's Day of Caring. And we also have a presentation of the employee contributions to the United Way of Marion County. So I'd like to call forward Amanda Tart with Human Resources, our director.
Okay. Commissioners, if you guys want to come around front, we do have some certificates for you all to hand out to the employees.
They are in there.
Hey, good idea.
think it's on.
Well, good morning, Commissioners. Amanda Tart, Human Resources Director. And for this presentation, I would actually like to call Scott Quintel back up here, as well as Natalie McComb with the United Way. Look at them. They're all just lining up. They're ready. So efficient. Yes, go on up there.
Y'all coming?
Commissioners, as you all know, over the years we've had a wonderful partnership with the United Way, and over the past couple of years we've really kind of kicked that back into gear, and we've had a lot of fun doing it. We have a slideshow presentation that'll play as I talk, and it just has some highlights of our employees as they participated in the United Way Day of Caring just a week or so ago. And we would like to call those employees up here and give them the recognition that they deserve for participating in that. They went on a weekend on their own time. A lot of them donated not just their time but money. They went to the Boys and Girls Club of Dunellen, and they were able to not only clean up but also do some plumbing work and some electrical work and really help get that back into shape out there. And, you know, as we go through our Empowering Marion for Success plan, one of the things that we are really focusing on is our core values that we put into place. And so the certificates that you're going to be handing out today are something new that we've started, and they exemplify our core values. So these employees, they went out and they showed commitment, which is one of our core values. And so that's why we wanted to bring them up here today so that you all can present that to them. Oh, I forgot my list. Okay. All right. So within our Public Safety Communications Department, we have Miss Alfreda Harmon. And with the County Attorney's Office, Gina Mercado. From Grow Services, we have Ken? Sorry, I'm not, what's your last name, Ken? Wayrock. Sorry about that. With Solid Waste, we have Sue Bedard. And from our Facilities Management Department, we have Jared Goodspeed. Mike Bates. Nanette Diaz, Dave Fager, and Derek Warnock. With our Fleet Management Department, we have Karen Holgate, Solid Waste, George White. From Human Resources, Robin Fraze. And also with Grow Services, Mr. Sam Martzoff. And we do have two employees that are not able to be with us today, but Carrie Hyde with our Procurement Department and Nicole Lasher with Grow Services. They were there, and they were there with the International Association of Firefighters. So these employees were the ones that signed up to go underneath with the county. So, yep. The union was there. They cooked hamburgers and hot dogs.
Perfect. Love it.
Come on, come on. We're not going to move this way. There you go.
Before you all walk off the stage after the photo, we do have a few comments, so I just want to make sure you stay.
And we also have one more presentation to make that the employees can stay up there for. Okay, and before everybody leaves, one other great thing that we were able to do this year is through our payroll contributions and our annual Jamboree Day, Marion County employees were able to donate over $28,000 to the United Way for this campaign year. So we do have a check to present to Natalie and Scott. All right.
Commissioner Stone, you want to come up here with me?
Yeah. Amanda.
Oh.
No, right here. Right here.
Oh.
You did all the work.
Oh, I didn't do all the work. No way.
Here?
We're going to get seated. No, you're right.
You're up in the
Good.
middle.
Yes, happy Fillmore.
Good name for a
That's
movie.
wonderful.
All right. Everyone look over here at the camera. 3, 2, 1.
Great job.
On behalf of United Way of Marion County, first of all, to all the county employees that are up here on the stage, thank you for your personal commitment to the community, for making the lives of others better. It's so inspiring to see you give of your personal time as well as your finances, so really appreciate all of you. County commissioners in the county, Monier, so proud of our partnership with the county. For the community to know this check, amazing, $28,000, represents a 218% increase over the year before. So you want to talk about going above and beyond and talking about an important level of commitment. We appreciate that. We appreciate the partnership we have with the county, and it's our commitment at United Way to make sure that we're being as good a partner to you as you're being to us as we look to improve the lives of folks here in Marion County. There are a few other folks that aren't here today that I think we need to recognize because of their effort, Amanda being one of those. Natalie McComb is our Vice President of Resource Development. I'm going to ask her to sneak out here real quick and just acknowledge those folks that put in a lot of effort to make this happen.
Yeah, so first I'll start with kind of behind the scenes. So again, Amanda Tart, thank you so much. Nick Zoller, Jared Barkman, Naja Griffiths as well, all helped behind the scenes to help make the county's campaign so successful and fun and engaging and entertaining as well. So thank you again. Also want to thank Josh Alvarez and Jeannie Rickman, who served on the campaign cabinet this year as well. So not only were they helping here at the county, but they were helping to engage other businesses and other workplaces throughout the county in support of United Way. And then I also want to really thank Commissioner Marcelle Stone. She was our campaign chair this year. So Commissioner Stone joined me on a number of visits out in the community to engage folks, to really help teach them about what United Way does, tell them about the local impact that we're having, and really serve as our ambassador. So I want to thank her for all her time, energy, effort, and enthusiasm. And I know getting on her calendar can be challenging, but she always made those appointments happen. And I just really appreciate all the work that she put into it. We'll be acknowledging her work as well as everyone else's at a community celebration on March 29th. So we're excited about that event taking place at the Appleton, where we'll share all the contributions in Marion County. So thank you.
Thank you again, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're tired from your trip, aren't you?
Oh, you're a rock star. Thank you so much.
Still need it. Thank you.
Good job. Okay, let's see. Next Okay, we'll go to our next proclamation, and that is the Master Gardener's Month. And
Can't hear you, ma'am.
there is a mic.
Somebody mute it. There you go.
Okay, we'll go to our next proclamation this morning, and this is for the Master Gardener's Month. And I'd like to call forward Pam Schmidt. If Pam Schmidt is with us in the audience, and I believe she's got some others that's going to be joining, and we're going to hand the mic over to Commissioner Moore to read the proclamation.
Good morning. We'll give you time to come up here. Brought quite a crew with you this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I got the group over here that skipped out on everything.
Morning, sir.
Can't reach everybody else.
Good morning. Okay, so let's get Pam in the center with Commissioner Moore. Commissioner Moore.
Let me grab my glasses. Help a little bit. Okay. On behalf of Marion County, I have the honor and privilege of presenting your Master Gardener Club with proclamation. Let me read it to you. Well, I got to read it to the record, but it didn't sound right. Anyway, it's Monday on a Thursday. Whereas, Master Gardeners will celebrate 25 years of excellent in gardening education for Marion County residents during their 25th annual Master Gardener Spring Festival the weekend of March 9th through 10th, 2019 at the Southeastern Livestock Pavilion. And whereas more than 187,000 people have attended this event, and whereas Master Gardeners teach citizens to use Florida-friendly plants, how to protect our water supply through proper fertilization, identification of good and bad bugs, thus eliminating the overuse of pesticides, and proper irrigation protocols for lawns and landscapes. And whereas Master Gardeners inspire youth to learn more about the natural features of our community via activities provided in the Spring Festival Kids Zone. And whereas Master Gardeners increase awareness of UF-IFAS, Marion County Extension Services, educational outreach programs available to the citizens of Marion County. Now, therefore, the Board of County Commissioners of Marion County, Florida, by the virtue of authority vested in us, do hereby proclaim March 2019 be known as Gardening Month in Marion County, and the Board urges all citizens to attend the Master Gardener Spring Festival, duly proclaimed this 7th day of March 2019, attested to by all 5 county commissioners, and signed by all 5 commissioners, attested to by David Ellsperman, clerk of the courts. Got that backwards. Sorry about that. But do you want to say a few words?
I would.
Okay.
We thank you all for this recognition and for your support throughout the year. We'd love to invite you and the public to visit our demonstration gardens and our nursery on the property of the Extension Service. The gardens are always open to the public. Monday through Friday, you can always find a master gardener or an extension agent to help you get around the property. And please come see us at our Spring Festival. It's not only our 25th anniversary of the Marion County Spring Festival, it's the 40th anniversary year of Master Gardener program in the state of Florida.
And David, did you want to say anything, sir?
Yes, thank you. We've had 25 years, and the Master Gardeners, I'm very proud of this group. They do such a good job thinking about how they can move people. A couple years ago, people said we would like things consolidated, so they made a big change and consolidated everything under the Livestock Pavilion. And so there will be plenty of shade, and it's going to be a great weekend to come out and get plants for your spring garden. So we appreciate all the good support that we receive from the commissioners. Thank you.
Just one question. Will you have either ghost peppers or Carolina Reapers? That's one of the plants. You don't know. They say ghost peppers. So ghost peppers are really good. Ghost pepper chili is really good. Just saying.
So actually, for anyone who's never been to the Spring Festival, we organize it and we do educational programs, but we have about 70 vendors there who will be selling their lawn, garden, ornamental products. And also, the plant clinic will be present at the Spring Festival, as well as our plant clinic is open Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Call in, write in, come in with any of your plant problems.
Well, again, we would like to thank all of our master gardeners for helping beautify Marion County and continuously offering these educational opportunities. So we do hope that the public will come out this weekend and enjoy and learn and be able to take some things home with them as well. So you all stay with us here. We'll do a quick photo.
All right, let's squeeze in. Closer than you plant plants.
All right, start hugging one step this direction. Three, two, one.
Thank you all so much.
I don't know mine on my desk.
Oh, thank you so very much.
Take one. That's yours.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next I'd like to invite to the stage for a proclamation Amy Roberts, who is the licensed clinical social worker, and Commissioner Bryant will be presenting the Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month proclamation to Ms. Roberts, as well as the many others that are joining her.
If you would like a colorectal cancer awareness pin,
I'll have it
comment around. Set mine down just for a second.
How are you doing?
I have
Just
so
gave
much.
away the so now I got one to replace it.
Hi there. Good morning. Would you like a pin? Hey, how are you?
Thank you.
You want me to share with the back?
We can share with you. Hi there. Hey, you can get my little, I'm good. Good to see you. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Okay, so y'all have all filtered over to the end. You got to come over here in the middle. Amy, you're going to have to be right here. All right. So I had to put my reading glasses on, so now I can't see any of you. Well, thank you for being here with us this morning, and on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners of Marion County, Florida, I'd like to present this proclamation. Whereas colorectal cancer is the fourth most commonly diagnosed cancer and the second most common cause of cancer deaths for men and women in the United States, affecting both genders equally. And whereas it is estimated that in 2019 in Florida, there will be nearly 12,000 cases of colorectal cancer diagnosed and nearly 4,000 deaths. The vast majority of colon cancer deaths can be prevented through proper screening and early detection. And whereas the survival rate of colorectal cancer patients is 90% when their cancer is detected at an early stage, this number drops to 10% when the cancer has spread. And whereas if the majority of adults aged 50 or older were screened regularly for colorectal cancer, the death rate from this disease could plummet by as much as 10%. And whereas colorectal cancer is preventable, treatable, and beatable in most cases, observing Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month provides a special opportunity to offer education on the importance of early detection and screening. The Marion County Cancer Alliance, in partnership with American Cancer Society, will lead the charge to increase colorectal cancer screenings with the charge to increase colorectal cancer screenings throughout Marion County, Florida. Now, therefore, the Board of County Commissioners of Marion County, Florida, by virtue of the authority vested in us, do hereby proclaim that March 2019 be known as Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. Duly proclaimed the 7th day of March 2019, signed by all 5 county commissioners and attested to by David Ellsperman, Clerk of the Court. So I'm going to hand this to you, and I'm also going to hand you the microphone so that you can share with us any awareness events that you have going on, or any places where people might go and get screening if they might not have access, or things like that. She's looking going, who's going to talk?
Thank you all very much for reading this proclamation, and recognizing the health and wellness of this community is very important to all of us. I've had 2 family members that actually have, one cancer was prevented from early screening, the other was found early stage, so the survival rate was 90%. Whereas if found late stage, it's only 10. So this is a very beatable disease, which is why we're so passionate about it. We have recently partnered with Hugs Charities and GI Associates, Heart of Florida, We Care, and Langley Health to provide some screening programs. So we're very excited about that coming. We're going to have a very large fundraiser on March the 28th through hugscharities.org if anybody is interested in donating to that cause and helping us. Anything else I'm forgetting, guys? Thank you so much.
I'll just put a plug in for the process. Having the test done, you may dread it. However, the dreaded word yeah. Yeah. And we're talking about a colonoscopy. You get to drink a lot of good juice the day before. You'll lose a couple pounds, and you'll have peace of mind, and it is over in a blink of an eye. Indeed. So, yeah. So truly, I mean, the process is not as bad as it sounds, and I do want to encourage people to really step forward, and I can do it. Anybody can do it. So I do encourage everyone to move forward with being tested, especially if you're over the age of 45. Over the age 45, then everyone should take this test. And for our employees, I believe this is something that you can take a day off for with part of your wellness program. So let's not let any Marion County employees go without being tested, as well as all of Marion County. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Heard it me. Sounds so good.
I think she did just make it sound wonderful, didn't she?
Well, and then you get to eat a lot.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
All right. One more step this direction. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Stay still. Christy needs one. Oh, yeah, I know. We're all trying to.
I think I'm due for another.
Yeah, we're still gonna get these done though.
Public hearing.
Public hearing?
Yeah.
One more, right?
Yeah.
Public hearing.
Public hearing.
We're going to go ahead and finish off of these really quick. On my agenda item, do I have everything? I only have the certificate of...
Mine is next.
Okay, let's do the proclamation. Yeah, the certificate of recognition. Is Mr. Keith Kimball in the audience?
Yes, he is. Him and Josh. Come on, Josh.
Mr. Kimball, we are proud to welcome you and all of your mini support group with you today. And Commissioner Gold is going to read the recognition. You did an awesome job.
Thank you.
You get to come over here in the middle.
Yeah, you're in the middle.
Y'all just get in the middle. There you go.
All right, this is a certificate of recommendation for presented to Keith Kimball. Keith Kimball, Logistics and Inventory Technician with Marion County Fire Rescue Department, submitted a suggestion to the Employee Suggestion Committee to create bunker gear dryers within Marion County Fire Rescue. Suggestion solves the issue of not having suitable process for drying recently washed bunker gear while preventing clutter within the fire stations and preventing the formation of mildew in the gear. the cost savings of having Mr. Kimball build these units versus purchasing them produced a cost savings of $27,834.45 this fiscal year, with an additional cost for additional savings to come as more units are built in the upcoming years. Mr. Kimball is recognized for his suggestion and for the great impact that this suggestion has made or is making on operations run smoother within the fire service. Now, therefore, before the Board of County Commissioners recognize that Keith Kimball is congratulated. Commissioner Moore, you got me tongue-tied today. So, as congratulated and recognized for his service, a certificate of recommendation shall be furnished to Keith Kimball and shall be made part of the permanent public records of Marion County, Florida, in the minutes of the meeting of the County Commission for Marion County, Florida, duly recognized the 7th day of March by all county commissioners and attested to by David Elsperman, clerk of the court. And I just want to make a little comment on this. For those who don't know, this is also as part of the cancer prevention awareness for the firefighters. Because if you think about it, the firefighters go into structure fires and different type of fires and all the carcinogens and the cancer causing agents, carcinogens and any of the other toxins that are there. They have to wash it out before they wear it, or they're just wearing this and absorbing it. And I saw this that you built, and I don't remember if Chief Alvarez, who logistics needs to fix your bugles, Chief Alvarez was there, or if it was Chris, one of the two, mentioned it and showed it to me, and that was amazing, because the gear has to be washed, it has to be cleaned, and it's so thick you just can't throw it in a regular dryer. So what you did was amazing, and I think it'll not only save us, a lot of money, but probably also save lives, and I appreciate that. So thank you. Chief? Anybody?
Good morning. I'm Chief Alvarez. So I had the pleasure of actually going through an interview and hiring Keith some years ago, and he's also a military veteran, 20 years. And so his skills came over into us, and it was a perfect fit. So we absolutely are great to have Keith. He's an all-star from Marion County. Thank you.
One step to the left.
This way.
3, 2, 1. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. There you go.
Thanks, Chief.
It was good to see you. I like the challenge of it. It was very fun to build, actually.
When I saw it, I've seen it. Thank you. Thank you.
Great job.
Our next proclamation is for procurement for the month of March is procurement month, and we're going to hand the mic over to Commissioner Zalek.
All right. Susan, you got some folks with you? Come on up.
Come on.
Stand right here. Good morning.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Thank you so much for all that you do.
All right. All right. In celebration of Purchasing Month, the Board of County Commissioners would like to recognize you and our fantastic team that makes a difference every day. The purchasing professionals have a significant role in the quality, efficiency, and profitability of business and government throughout the United States. In addition to purchasing goods, services, professional services, engaging in or having direct responsibility for functions such as procurement of goods, services, implementing and administrating contracts, developing forecasts and procurement strategies, developing and working relationships with suppliers and the departments within all of our organization. Purchasing professionals make important contributions to ensure the effective use of taxpayer dollars by providing effective, efficient service while maintaining the highest standards. Marion County is committed to the procurement process that places integrity first. Marion County, Florida solicits bids in a manner that promotes full and open competition among businesses and Marion County Procurement Department and other associations around the globe are sponsoring activities with special events to further educate and inform the general public regarding the role of purchasing. And Marion County Procurement Department is committed to increasing the partnerships of Marion County businesses in the competitive process. Now, therefore, the Board of County Commissioners of Marion County, Florida, by the virtue of the authority vested in us, proclaim the month of March 2019 be known as Purchasing Month. Signed by all the commissioners and attested to by David Elspring, Clerk of the Court. Thank you guys for what you do. People don't recognize how effective and efficient our process is, and as well as engaging. So if you're a business out there and you want to do business with Marion County, please contact our department. We'll walk you step by step through the process, help you to get on the bid list, send you the information, and make sure that you have a great experience and give you the chance to do business with our community, because our business partners see the fact that not only do they have the opportunity to do business with Marion County, but they're serving their friends and family members right next door. So thank you for what you do, Susan, and your fantastic team.
We are having a vendor training on March 12th at 10 a.m. If you would like to attend as a citizen or a business, you're welcome to attend. We don't always get a lot of interest in these training, and it's really just to kind of introduce you to us, our staff, our process, and to basically open our doors to you. If you're a citizen and you want to know how your money is being spent, come into our office. So for the month of March, for Purchasing Month, we do this all the time, but we're making a special effort to open our doors to anybody that just wants to come in and say, hey, I want to talk to somebody about how you do business. Go to our desk, and she knows that code word of Purchasing Month, and just anybody in our office will come and talk to you. We'll open our bid books. You can look at anything. We are open door all the time, but we're going to make a special effort this month to reach out to our citizens and our local businesses. We want you to come in and find out how the county spends your money. So come on by.
Together, you all have to come across here. Perfect, perfect. Y'all like each other, right? All right. There you go. Look at y'all.
All right. Take one step to the left, please. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Thank you for leading.
Thank you guys so much for what you do.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Congratulations. You don't get it. You got it.
Well, that was fun. A lot of presentations and proclamations this morning, so I appreciate the patience that everyone has had, and I hope you've enjoyed hearing and learning about some opportunities to learn more about doing business with Marion County, as well as taking care of your health. So we're going to go on into our public hearing, and so Madam Clerk, if you'll please make sure that we've noticed this appropriately.
Yes, ma'am. I have a proof of publication of a display ad entitled Notice of Public Hearing to Consider Development Agreement Amendment and PUD Conceptual Master Plan Approval for Ocala Crossing South PUD, published in the Star Banner newspaper on February 27, 2019.
Very good. Thank you so much. And we'll begin with staff presentation, and I see Mr. Risen has joined us at the podium.
Good morning. Chris Rising with the Growth Services staff. We're here in relation to the Ocala Crossing South Development Project, which is a PUD located in southwestern Marion County. The project request today relates to actually 3 different activities related to the project. It is consideration of a developer's agreement modification, approval of their master plan, then also approval of a deed to convey property back to the developer that was previously conveyed within the last year or so. related to a park parcel. Again, the site's down at southwestern Marion County off of the new future 49th Avenue extension at 90th Street, adjoining the Liberty Middle School and Hammett Bowen Parks and that Bradford Farms Hamlet area. Primarily an area of concern has been the southwest area related to buffering to the Bradford Farms project. And there has been some resolution regarding that, and there's actually been some modifications from our staff report, and those will be touched on by the applicant when they step up to the podium in a moment. However, staff is recommending approval of the request to modify the agreement, which will recognize that the park will no longer be required out of the project, and that property will be reintegrated back into the development. And then also there is an adjustment in the
Chair.
report.
Yes.
Chris,
Excuse me.
when you say reintegrated back into the development, it's reintegrated back into the development as open space
Yes, ma'am.
and an amenity.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. And they actually have a larger amenity site that they were already proposing, and it'll be kind of supplementing into that.
Perfect.
And then what occurs is the date for the completion of the Southwest 49th Avenue extension for their project is going to be recognized as February 29th, 2020, which is just about 1 year from now. And then in terms of the buffering to the Bradford Farms Hamlet provision, what's occurred is they have looked at right now at this point, the discussions are instead that they will do their 10-foot buffer. It'll include a combination of berms and then a viburnum hedge on the top. There's already a 3-board fence from Bradford Farms, which they will be maintaining, and so there will be no fencing in this buffer. They'll provide that hedge instead. And that will be presented to, will be touched on by Mr. Mastrosario, who's the engineer for the project. And then again, they'll replicate that on the south boundary as well, because they do wrap around, Bradford Farms wraps around this portion of the Ocala Crossings project. And then the final action will also be approval of the statute 125D to technically return the park property back to the developer, because they had conveyed it about 1.5 years ago. So again, staff is recommending approval with the adjustments to the agreement to reflect a revised master plan to reflect the selected and adjusted buffer type, for instance. And it's approval of that execution, approval of the master plan, and then also approval of the deed.
Okay. So do we have anyone representing this morning with us? Very good. If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, Paolo Mastrosario, 101 East Silver Springs Boulevard, Ocala 34470. As Chris mentioned, we were going back and forth a little bit with the residents. I had met out with them, and I think we've come to a resolution on what the residents would be happy with, or at least the majority of the HOA would be happy with, along our western boundary, which would be their eastern boundary, and our southern boundary, which would be part of the northern boundary of the southern part of Bradford Farms. So we're going to go ahead and comply with what they would have requested and go with a continuous viburnum hedge along that property line. There will be some elevation changes from an engineering perspective where we will have an elevated berm. It'll vary in height, anywhere from 4 to 1.5 to 2 feet along the perimeters. And so I think it would meet what the general public is, or the folks in Bradford Farms are looking for. And as far as the internal parks on the rest of the development, we are going to integrate those amenities. It's not going to be used. The 10 acres is just going to be moved from one spot into the other. That's all.
Do we have any questions from the board, from the applicant? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mastrosario, and we'll open it up for public comment at this point. Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to come forward? If so, please come forward, give your name and address for the record, and you will have a couple of minutes to share your thoughts on this.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Nicholas Capone. My address is 9170 Southwest 52nd Terrace, Ocala. I am a resident of the Bradford Farms community. My wife and I retired from South Florida in public service, and we moved up to the Bradford Farms community about 3.5 years ago. And we moved there for a reason, ma'am. That is, we enjoyed the serenity and the natural setting of the horse community and the properties and how everything was maintained. And that is our primary interest, speaking on behalf of the HOA. We are primarily interested in the aesthetics, maintaining those aesthetics, and that serenity of Bradford Farms. Therefore, we ask the Commission to consider option 2, which spoke upon earlier by the engineer, is the vegetation or the hedge along with the berm along that east property line surrounding those homes. Now, we do have a majority of our homeowners that have already agreed to that. And again, that is our primary interest, to maintain the natural settings of this habitat.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Capone. And is that notated, Chris, inside these actions today?
It is not, because that is actually different from where this began. It would essentially be what is called option 2 on their concept plan that was provided, which it would now staff supports the adjustment for that. So it would be the option 2.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Capone.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Do we have anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this item? If so, please come forward, give your name and address for the record.
Ole Mealand, 9322 Southwest 54th Terrace. Nick previously spoke representing the board, and they passed a resolution last week unanimously supporting that, and I have that resolution with those minutes if the board would so like to see that. And I also have, we do have 7 properties that border the Ocala crossings, and 6 of those 7 have requested the verbenum hedge. One would like to have the vinyl fence, and I have all of those statements that if you wanted me to include those for the record, I have those as well.
That's your option. If you'd like to make it, if you give it to us, it will become public record, and we can't return that to you. So.
Okay, well, I got extra copies, so okay. I'll give you this, and then I'll grab the minutes and present them as well.
That's fine. We'll just give them over to the clerk, please.
And Madam Clerk, or Madam Chair, I had one quick question.
Sure.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm hearing correctly. Your homeowners association is in support of what Mr. Master Stereo just said that they were proposing?
Yes, unanimous.
That's all I need to know. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meelan. Thank you for being with us. Do we have anyone else in the audience? Great. Good morning.
Good morning. Mark Drazen, 5355 Southwest 90th Lane, Ocala, Florida, homeowner in Bradford Farms. And just to tie back to the original agreement back in 2014, the proposal is in conjunction and in congruency with what we had discussed, because I know I'd come in front of you before about that. And this is what we had discussed previously that hadn't been written into anything. So we are in full support of Plan B.
Very good. Thank you so much. Do we have anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this item? If not, Mr. Mastacerio, I hope I'm not butchering your name.
No, you're fine. Thank you. At this point, I don't have anything further other than I remember at the last commission meeting that got tabled, the residents also asked for single-story homes as well along those perimeters, and we've indicated that on the master plan as well. So we've complied with their request on that.
Although the gentleman, Mr. Drazen, who just spoke, is what he referred to as Plan B. Is that the same as option 2?
Yes. Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for working with the development and the homeowners there to make life pleasant for everyone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make a motion for approval of option 2.
Second.
Including the buffering and the first single story around the edges.
So we have...
That in the second option there? I just want to make sure.
Yes, and that would be the second option. Yes. And at this point, I do need 3 separate motions if I can.
Okay, so we need them separately.
This motion
it could be separate or group.
This one's for the master plan.
Master plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Commissioner Zalek, second by Commissioner Moore, to accept the master plan. And Commissioner Bryant, did you have anything?
I'll wait till we're all done.
Okay, very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
I'll make a motion to approve and authorize authorization to execute the second modification to the developer's agreement.
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Bryant, second by Commissioner Gold. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Motion for approval and authorization to execute the statute 125 deed, returning the PUD Park parcel to the owner.
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Bryant, second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Mr. Mentor.
Again, I just want to be clear on the record. So when the motion was made, the first motion to approve the master plan, that was approving it with the option 2.
Option 2.
Option 2.
Yes, sir.
I think that's what I stated.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Well, we thank you all for being with us.
And I want to thank Mr. Fisher, Mr. Mastriserio for listening to everyone and for bringing back a great plan. Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank
All right,
you, guys.
happy living, everybody.
Happy living.
Indeed.
Pretty good. I like that.
Okay, let's go back into, God bless you. We're now going to go into our general public items. And with us today, we have Kathy Wyckoff with the AHA Project. I saw her earlier. Ms. Wyckoff, are you still with us? We'll go to our next speaker, and that would be Karen Arman. Miss Arman.
I haven't seen her this morning.
I didn't see her.
I don't think she's here.
Okay, we'll next move to Frank Tavares. Very good. We welcome you, Mr. Tavares, and if you'll please give your name and address for the record. Those
I give this to the clerk.
Okay. So those that have signed up to speak will have 5 minutes to talk with the board. At that point, as your time begins to expire, you'll see a yellow light and then the red light, and we'll ask that you please.
Over here? Where do I see
It'll
the
be
light?
right at the top.
Ah, perfect.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Yes. Okay. Thank
Does
you,
that
Mr.
mean that my
Tavares,
time has
for being
started?
with us. Your time has started.
All right. I am Frank Tavares, and my address is 563 Marion Oaks Trail, Ocala, Florida, 34473. I represent a local advertising company called CEOcast. We set up screens in strategic high-traffic locations, and we fill them up with ads. Our mission is to connect business owners with their prospective clients. Why should you care about that? Well, what I am trying to do is to fill these screens with community-relevant information so that these business owners can gain as much value from it as possible, and so that the community can see them as a formidable, reliable source of information. I don't know if you know this, but Ocala is the 7th least tech-savvy city in the whole nation. I don't know if you're aware, but it's a very extensive city. It's very geographically abundant with a proportionately small population. That results in people not really knowing what to do or where to go, or finding out too late. I've been here for almost 5 months, and when I tell people that I moved here from Miami, their response, no other response, is, "Oh, I'm sorry." Why? I have realized that this is a wonderful town, but it's only because I've had the opportunity to rub shoulders with business owners and executives and directors that are the ones making decisions here. But not everybody has that luxury. But everybody does stand in line. Everybody has to eat. Everybody has to go to the doctor eventually. What I do, I set up these screens in locations that residents frequent, so that whatever information is in them, we can help them understand what goes on in their own community. My biggest desire today is to be able to work with you to consolidate this town, this county, as what I see it. Something fun, vibrant, exciting, full of opportunity and excellence. But in order for that to happen, our community needs to know the value of this. Help me show it to them. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us, Mr. Tavares. I would also invite you to visit our procurement department and talk with them about how you can do business with Marion County.
Certainly.
Thank you again for being with us today. Ms. Wyckoff, we're happy you're with us again this morning.
Well, thank you so much. Good morning, Commissioners. Kathy Wyckoff, 723 Northwest 30th Avenue. I really enjoyed the fact that I got to listen to the homeless presentation, and this really wasn't planned. Of course, you probably realize I don't plan anything. I come here with all this stuff and I just kind of wing it. But when I stood before you a couple of years ago, when we were considering placing a motel and turning it into a homeless destination here in Silver Springs, I had brought someone. His name was Lynn. I don't know if you remember him. He was in the audience. I just looked up the date that I picked him up off the street. That was March 3rd. It's been 2 years. And he was arrested 62 times before that. He has not been arrested since then. He remains in housing, and it looks like he might be our first tiny house recipient. So anyway, just to give you a story to go along with what Scott presented, which is absolutely you can change lives permanently and save a ton of money. It cost $100,000 in the jail and lost 5 years of his life for sleeping in the open. So anyway, today is going to be brief. I know you don't believe me, but it's true. I don't know if you saw this in the paper, but I gave you a copy of it where we had a gentleman who was 10 times potentially, according to the girlfriend, had overdosed and been revived with Narcan. He was obviously a recidivist. He'd been in prison. He's one of the people that I hope we can continue to help and help hopefully inside the jail. I did want to give you a little reminder. Today is the task force meeting. It's at 3:30. If all of you could come, everybody, why don't we all come to the task force meeting today at 3:30 on the opiate problem. It continues to escalate here. I did give you a copy of this too. Chief Graham, shout out for Chief Graham, doing a great job. And I happened to wander upon an overdose. I've actually wandered onto a couple and not picking up my skips either. This was at McDonald's. They'd already been revived. We came at the same time, emergency response. And so if you're not carrying Narcan, all of you, there's going to be a workshop this weekend out at Centers. The last thing I brought you today is from 2003, a corrections annual report. So that's going way back. It was actually in the middle of my career. I've been doing this forever, as you all know. But it's very interesting. It has a lot of data. It has a lot of statistics. I think you'll find it very interesting. It gives us a lot of numbers. We're data-driven. And as the gentleman before me pointed out, we are not real tech savvy or data-driven. I'd like to see us take this, if you would, commissioners, and take a look at it. And let's see if we can't develop some of this data for now so we can do some comparison from then to now. And look, I still have a green light. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you for being with us, and it looks like you've also brought us a book.
Oh, I forgot, the March Book of the Month, which I was required reading when I was in college. I'm a psychology minor. I think you'll find it very, very interesting. So I'll send you an email about that. I know you guys have a long meeting today, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for being with us, Ms. Wyckoff. Okay, Ms. Arman, just one more time, wanted to make sure if she was with us. And next we have Kathy Winperio. You can correct me when you get here. If you'll give me your name and address when you get to the podium for the record.
Kathy Ginepero, 12945 Northeast 5th Lane, Silver Springs. The reason I'm here today is we live in Silver Springs and we live next to 12953 is the subject at hand, Northeast 5th Lane. We live next door to them. For the past 2.5 years, this property has been unkept but acceptable. Since last November, it's neither kept or acceptable. Our neighbor who lived there is incarcerated. There is nobody in the house. If I could, I would like to give you these.
Just pass them to the clerk.
If you'll pass them to the clerk, and once you give them to us now, they do become public record. Okay, just making sure.
Actually, you got to look at them to see what I'm talking about because it doesn't otherwise justify it. It's where we live is a neighborhood mostly of older people. There's only a couple people in there that are younger. This one gentleman that lives next to us, like I said, he is incarcerated, and he could care less about maintaining his yard or anything about it, front yard, backyard. I was gonna say, the situation has gotten to the point where we can't deal with it anymore. 2 months ago, he started by leaving his dogs in the house for like days at a time and out of the house for days at a time. That situation's been resolved where the dogs have gone to good homes, but unfortunately, when he left them in and out of the house for days at a time, the smell, everything that's coming from that house is pretty nasty. He's got trailers and vehicles on the right-of-way out in front. Basically already called code enforcement, but I still wanted to present it to you guys. It's just horrible. I mean, I said, when we moved in 3 years ago, it wasn't like this. I have honestly seen insects and other varmints coming from the house. That's how bad it is. His mother has been deceased since 2016. The house is in her name. I don't know how we go about taking care of this, but we would really appreciate it. The neighborhood would really appreciate it if something could be done. I've got a petition here with names on it from the neighborhood that I have already given to the clerk to ask that something can be done about this. It's just an ungodly situation. It really is. And I hate to see it when it gets to be like 90 degrees in July, you know, and everything's coming our way. So I'm sure I'm probably forgetting to say something. The other two people that were going to be here to talk behind me about the same situation, they had to leave. They are not here. One of the girls that was going to talk had an opportunity to go through the house about a week and a half ago, and she said that the conditions in there were pretty bad. I don't know if you, like I said, if you people can do anything, but we would appreciate all the help that we can get. It's bad.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Zalek.
Do you live on one of these sides of the house? Are you behind it, or?
We're next to it. That's 12953 here. We live on the other side. I don't think you can see our house in the picture. But that's basically what the neighbors have to look at and deal with. And unfortunately, even the last couple days before it got cold, when it was warm, I was just getting the whiff from dog feces from the yard, the house, the backyard. Everything is just, there's no acceptable.
Already picked up the animals from there?
He had 2 dogs, and we already took care of that situation. Animal control got on top of it, and the dogs went to a good home. But unfortunately, this person could care less about cleaning up, and everything was just left, and now we're getting the stench of everything from there, along with looking at the stuff in his front yard. I said the pictures are self-explanatory in the backyard, too. Yeah. And he's not able to do anything because he's incarcerated. So
no one's living there?
Nobody's living there. Nobody's been living there for a while. He got incarcerated last weekend. So it just...
So we do have a code enforcement
complaint
that's been
we put
filed.
in a complaint about that, so they have started something, but I had already made this appointment here, so I wanted to keep it just to let you people see what's going on.
Very good. Well, I'm sure our code enforcement will continue to work this case.
Okay.
I believe everybody should be able to live in a beautiful environment as best that we're capable of providing, that they're capable of providing, and the neighbors should not have to suffer for things like this.
It's right in the forest and it's beautiful, but this just not acceptable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being with us today. Do we have anyone else in the audience who would like to speak this morning? If so, I'll invite you.
Sam is motioning.
We have to go through a certain...
Tell her meet Sam out there.
They're incarcerated?
Okay, so...
With that lady.
Sam can give you an update.
Yes, Sam's in the lobby.
Where'd he go?
He's in the lobby.
He rolled back out.
Yeah, we didn't call him up.
So if Mr. Mortzoff is available to come forward. I'm sorry, Garen, just a moment.
I was just not sure if he, because he was incarcerated, if we could take action quicker. I didn't know.
Here he comes.
Oh, he's...
Okay, you'll take care of it out here, and that'd be great. Okay, we'll leave you to do it, and all the best, Sam. Take care of yourself.
Hold on.
Yeah. We'll put that in Mr. Bortzoff, our growth management, who handles code enforcement. He'll take care of speaking on that issue with Kathy. Okay, so thank you for being with us, Karen. You'll have 2 minutes if you'll give your name and address for the record, please.
Absolutely. I'm Karen Hill, 108 North Magnolia Avenue, Ocala. I am currently the Executive Director of the Marion County Homeless Council and the COC lead agency for Marion County. I'm here today just to give you an update. I did it last year after the pit count became semi-formal, and those numbers were provided to me from our HMIS department this week, which is our homeless management system. And as you know, as the lead agency for the COC, which is obviously a very large conversation right now, our number one job is to reduce homelessness in the community. And so I'm really excited to give you the numbers today. In 2017, we showed 725 homeless people in our point-in-time count, which is always the last 10 days of January. In 2018, we counted 725 in 2017. In 2018, we had 572, which is a reduction of 153 people. This year, we show 488, which is a continued reduction of another additional 84. So in the last 3 years, we've reduced the number of people homeless, whether they're sheltered in an emergency shelter or living in a place unfit for human habitation, by 237 people. So I think as we talk about what are we doing with the homeless in Marion County, this is the other side of the coin. So we like to keep you educated as to the work that's being done.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely. And at first I'll say that's great work. I mean, which goes back to, as an agency provider, you are doing yeoman's work.
Well, this is the entire COC. This is not the Homeless Council as
Gotcha,
direct
gotcha.
care. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Zalek.
So I know what's very difficult about this, like kind of tracking the population is a difficult task just
Absolutely.
in itself. So are these all done on the same basic day every year?
We try to, well, the HUD mandates that we count the last 10 days of January.
Okay.
The last 4 years since I've been the director, we have always counted on a Thursday, because that's when the congregate feedings are done downtown, and that's when we are able to locate the most homeless.
Okay.
The last couple years, Dennis Jantz from the city obviously has been very involved. He's actually been the committee chair for the point-in-time count. The point-in-time count is a picture.
Sure.
And so every year we'll say to the Board of Directors or the Board of Governance that we have our numbers, however, we can't give you the picture yet. And they'll say, what? And the reason for that is HUD will send down what's an algorithm that we put in the number of people that have been seen or interviewed during that time. And they will say, okay, history shows that we've double counted this many, we've missed this many, and it changes the numbers a bit.
Okay.
And so right now, with what's happening with the numbers going into HUD, it looks like we will be reporting 488 this year.
Very good. Excellent. And if I could, that count was done on a very cold night.
Yes, it was.
So we feel pretty confident that we were able to get.
Yes, and Mr. Jantz is obviously being out on the streets every day, is very aware of where the homeless are. And I don't want to get into politics of homelessness because we all have our own separate passions, but the one thing that I think that's important to include with these numbers is that HUD does not allow us to include the people in the jail. And right now there is a very large population of homeless who are being arrested for public sleeping, for open lodging, municipal violation, and so those people we are not allowed to count. That would have increased the number quite a bit.
Can you give us the date of that count, please, Ms. Hill?
To be honest, I cannot. It was the last Thursday of January. I don't
fine.
remember exactly what the date was.
That's fine. Thank you very much, and thank
Absolutely.
you for being with us today.
Absolutely. I just like to keep you informed.
I was just curious too.
Sure.
So in this number, do you see that these people are can you track them through the process from going from, you know, maybe homeless out on the street? Is that homeless living in a hotel? Is that
this? I can give you a little bit more of a breakdown. This includes, let's see,
understanding those numbers.
Unsheltered total persons were 177.
Okay, so that's people that are living in a tent of some sort or
Correct.
something like that.
A place unfit for human habitation is HUD's verbiage.
And that was 177. 177.
And sheltered in transitional housing was 141.
Okay.
And sheltered in emergency shelter, which would be
Like Salvation Army.
Salvation Army, Interfaith,
Okay.
there was 170.
170. Okay.
And I would imagine that night that the sheltered also included a red weather night, because as Ms. Stones mentioned, it
Sure.
was a cold evening.
Okay.
And so if it's below 45 degrees, the Salvation Army will open the red weather.
Very good.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, the only other thing I'd like to say is as you continue the conversation about homelessness and the continuum of care, we hope that you include the lead agency in those conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Yes,
great
ma'am.
day.
You also. Do we have anyone else in the audience who would like to speak this morning? If so, please come forward.
Good morning, Commissioners and
morning.
leadership of Marion County. My name is Shauna Lloyd, 101 Marietta Avenue. I am the Partnership Specialist here in Central Florida for the 2020 census. So I gave some packets for you with further information, but I'll just give you a general background on what we're doing and to introduce myself. So since 1790, we've taken a population count of everyone here residing in the U.S. It is the census. It's taken on all years ending in 0, which will be 2020. The reason that the census population count is so important is obviously it affects our representation in the House. We gained 2 seats in 2010. We're slated to gain a possible second seat, additional 2 seats in 2020. So that's very exciting for Florida, but we have to make sure that we get an accurate count. The other important portion of this is going to be the allocation of federal dollars. There's federal funding that's given to the state, the counties, and the cities based on population. These are programs such as Head Start, Pell Grants, firefighter, disabled veterans, highways and construction, and a host of other programs that obviously the counties definitely partake in and receive dollars for. There are a couple of things that are different about the census. It is going to be online reportion or any smart device, so it could be a cell phone, it could be an iPad, it can be a laptop. We are working with the community to open libraries and other centers so people who don't have resources can come and respond. And the other reason that we work very heavily with the counties and cities is we find the best way to interact with our residents is through what we call a complete count committee. A complete count committee is a group of trusted voices that determine how they want to reach out to residents of a designated county or city. Typically, it'll have subgroups for education, for small business, unique population. And so I work with whoever is appointed as a liaison of the committee to get the information to residents and to let them know where they can respond and the methods in which. The other really important part about the census is that we only hire from the local areas. So if you're working here in Marion County, then you'll be from Marion County. We do that because you understand the area and the population that you're going to be working with. So this was just a really brief intro, and my information is in there. I will be reaching out probably to the county administrator to kind of further talks about the census, but I just wanted to provide you that introduction.
Well, thank you, Ms. Lloyd. We appreciate you coming. There is a little concern with the fact that this is going to only be an online count this year. So that means people have to be proactive in order to be counted. And in the case of many areas within our community, we do not have broadband, there is no internet. So I'm sure you're probably hearing that from around the country, how this could be concerning for all communities. Can you give us a little idea of what you're doing to mitigate that?
So what we're doing is when we come into counties and cities, we're working with any organization that's willing to allow residents to come in and either use their computer systems to allow for response. We also are educating about our secondary response method. There is a 1-800 number that will be staffed right now in 27 languages. They're hoping to increase the languages that they can actually call in and respond. So there are some secondary methods. They can also request the traditional mail form. However, they have to request it and it has to be sent to them. So that's why we're really starting a year out, technically almost, to get the education so residents do know how they can respond.
Sure. Certainly. Yes, Commissioner Bryant?
How do they request a form?
They haven't told us exactly. That hasn't rolled out yet. As we get information, we give it out. They haven't determined if it's going to be something that they call in through the 1-800 number, if it's something that's going to be written. I don't have that information. But as soon as I get it, all things concerning the census have to be determined by June. So everything concerning that will be rolled out in June, which is why we here at Partnership, we focus more on the education. We reach out to our local officials at the county and at the city level, so that way we have a relationship and a pipeline. So as soon as I get that information, I'm able to communicate it to you and whoever is the liaison, so that way it can be disseminated into the community.
Well, I feel certain that we will want to partner with you just as close as possible to help get the message out so that our community gets an appropriate count. Mr. Briones, would you like to share, or you have any other comments on that?
No additional comment, but we will be working with her, Commissioner, to make sure we reached out to all our residents.
Very good. And there's lots of festivals and weekend opportunities for people to be at to help share the message out. So as you're thinking about
Wonderful.
your staffing.
Yes, we do like to participate in all of those type of events as well. So I'll work very close with the county and making sure that we are present and that we are getting that information out.
Great. Well, we appreciate you being here.
Can I ask a question, Madam Chair?
Yes, absolutely,
So,
Commissioner Zhao.
when you're hiring folks this time, I mean, traditionally you're hiring, people to go out and walk. Is that the same process, or?
So there's a
is it gonna be
number of
different?
jobs available. Every area has what we call an area census office. So that is where recruiting happens. So there's going to be recruiting staff, there'll be a clerk, there's going to be people that actually work in the office. Then we have jobs like address canvassing. Those are our people who don't like to interact with other people. They have to verify the address list. So that's done, they're given a handheld device, they are given assignments every day, so they go out and do that. We do have non-response follow-up, where if someone does not respond to the census, there are workers that do go and knock on the doors. Yes, we definitely
still do that process.
Yes, we
Okay.
definitely do that, just to remind people.
Sure.
So there's a number of jobs that are available, and the great thing about the jobs is they do pay weekly. They are mostly based from home, and we do offer very high competitive wages just because we recognize it is a temporary job.
Sure.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. Well,
Thank
we
you guys for your
appreciate-
time, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you for being with us, Ms. Lloyd. Do we, Mr.
Birthday boy.
Yeah. A birthday?
Henry Munoz, 495 Marion Oaks Boulevard, Ocala, Florida. I have an easement question. Last week, for emergency reasons, there was a hole dug in front of my meter. I come home, it's not a little hole, 4 by 4. I come home and I have no idea why it's there. I come to find out the next day that it had to do with a telephone line being cut. Not on my property, a few houses down, a new house that was built. My biggest concern with them was, why wasn't I left a notice why there was this big hole in the corner of my yard? Why wasn't my neighbor informed? She happened to be home.
Were these on your property?
On the easement.
In the right of way.
In the right of way.
Probably what he's saying.
Yeah, in the easement.
And Commissioner, utilities, they have a wide range of flexibility by state statute. If they are doing a repair under an emergency situation, they don't even tell us. They come after the fact and go through the permit process and bring us to date. I don't know what we can do in situations like this. I don't know how much leverage we have on that.
Well, I opened up a case and I'm leaving it open until I get my grass back because they had to cut more holes in the yard. My biggest concern. What?
That was the telephone company?
Yes, CenturyLink. And that to me upset me. Communications company, and couldn't leave me a communications as to why there was a hole there?
We have our county engineer coming forward.
Tracy Straub, County Engineer. What our administrator, Mr. Briones, says is correct. While we permit in the right-of-way, there is a lot of activity that does happen without permits. We find it after the fact, the residents keeping us informed. With Mr. Munoz informing us, we will follow back up and insist that proper repairs get made. We don't have a lot of fees involved in this. We don't have a lot of leverage involved in this. So we look for cooperation, and those utilities know that they must cooperate, but it's in their best interest to be good neighbors.
Yeah,
So, thank you.
My biggest regard was, I would like to see if there's a way you can ask them, leave information behind, not just a big hole.
It's something we can ask the utility companies to do, but we cannot force them to do it. All what we can do is ask them.
Unless we come up with an ordinance, okay.
No, we can't even come up with an ordinance. We'd have to change state statutes.
They're subject to the Public Service Commission, as
Yeah.
who regulates them.
Okay, good.
Thank you,
Yeah, but that
Mr.
doesn't mean
Munoz.
you can't have an ordinance that says you have to leave information, does it?
If it,
I mean, it's not going to inhibit their work or their process or.
I don't know.
I don't know we can
I don't know if
regulate
we could
Enforce
that if it's not in state statute.
yeah, it can't conflict with the ordinance, what's in the ordinance.
Can't supersede federal or state with this ordinance.
Well, so
But
the
it
question,
wouldn't.
the question is whether or not the Public Service Commission has what they call preempted the field of regulation of public utilities, and if they have, then local governments can't. For instance, the Public Service Commission is the agency that issues franchise areas for water and sewer utilities, that kind of thing. So,
Right.
and they approve all of their tariffs, their rules and regulations of their operations. But we could look. I can look into it and report back to you on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mentor.
And that's specifically for emergency repairs. I think that's what we're dealing with.
Or any repair. They can certainly leave a door hanger.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Do we have anyone else in the audience who would like to speak this morning? If so, I'll invite you forward. If not, we will close public comment and we will move to adopting one set of minutes for January the 15th.
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Moore, second by Commissioner Bryant. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. We do not have any constitutional officers or government outside agencies, but Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My agenda is 5A, 1 through 11 for budget amendments as listed on the agenda, please.
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Moore, second by Commissioner Bryant. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
I'll next move us to our consent agenda, 7A through 7I-12. And Mr. Zalek, I'll start with you. Commissioner Zalek.
I'm good.
Commissioner Gold. Commissioner Bryant. I'm good. Commissioner Moore. All right. Well, we have nothing pulled, so I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Moore, second by Commissioner Bryant. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. I'll next take us to our county attorney. Mr. Mentor, you gave us quite a lot of information to consider here.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, Dana Lesky is going to brief the board on the item 8A regarding alternative amendments to Chapter 4 of the Animal Code and Enforcement Ordinance.
Okay, so before Mr. Lesky begins to present, I will just share with the board. I've had a chance to look over some of this, but as she gives us this information, I personally don't think that I'm going to be ready to make any recommendations and approve anything until I have some one-on-one. So I'll just put that out there for my own board members to hear my position on this. So, Ms. Oleski.
Good morning, Dana Oleski, Chief Assistant County Attorney. As you know, we've had several meetings with citizens and some one-on-ones with each one of the commissioners regarding some items. I have completed my research on some of them, looked into whether or not they would be legally enforceable. I've sat down with Animal Services and we went through the ordinance, and there are some additional changes that from an operational standpoint, Animal Services is interested in changing. But the 4 items that you have in front of you were 4 significant items that we've been presented with language from citizens as well as some commissioners. The first one was the mandatory microchipping. I know that SPCA of Ocala had met with each one of you regarding some items, and mandatory microchipping was one of them. Currently, Animal Services already does microchipping after a bite, If we do an intake of your animal as a stray, you're required to get a microchip before we return it to you. So the only additional extension of a mandatory microchipping would be to require when someone takes ownership of a dog or a cat that they obtain a microchip within a certain amount of time. And I gave you some sample language regarding that. We've had some issues about whether or not microchipping could, if there were exemptions. So I also gave you language for possible medical exemptions should a veterinarian say that for a particular reason the animal couldn't be microchipped. But that would allow, as we've made the transition to no-kill, we have been relying on the community and a lot of other rescue organizations to reunite some of these lost pets. And by requiring them to be microchipped, that would help aid in returning the animals. Additionally, the Florida statute last year changed and requires the shelter and humane organizations to have a policy and procedure about how they are going about reuniting them. So the mandatory microchipping would be something that we would be able to do if the board desired.
Before you go forward, can I ask you a question on that? On the microchipping, is there one common organization that keeps this information that is accessible?
I really can't speak to that. I know that there are different agencies. Years ago, there was only one. I think recently we've went with a different vendor, Aved? No, a different vendor. The biggest concern with microchipping is a lot of people don't actually update the information. So if you adopt from Marion County Animal Services and the dog or cat exchanges hands, we can at least still try to locate an owner because we're going to have information with the microchipping. But if you don't actually change the information, we spend a lot of time sometimes going through 3 different owners because no one's ever actually changed the microchip information. So by requiring with the county license to maybe have, when you change your license information, updating the microchip at the same time would help eliminate that. So I don't know if you want Mr. Sweet to talk specifically about the microchipping. He would know that answer more than I on the companies for microchipping.
Well, I'll wait till unless, board, would you like to hear some detail?
I just have a question.
Okay.
So I know that most of the time, even when we even talk about the retail sale of animals, they have to wait. Jim, can you give us the waiting period before, and they have to be weaned first, so it's usually, right, I mean, before they put an animal for sale or adoption, how long is that, at least initial period?
Well, for a dog or a cat, it's going to be 8 weeks per the statute before they can place it up for sale.
Okay, and so if that happens, is there any reason at that point, before sale or adoption, that the animal could not be microchipped?
Not that I'm aware of. It would be up to the veterinarian who's providing their health certificates to implant that microchip. It should not be an issue. We implant all animals with microchips at our shelter, including as early as 8 weeks.
And is there any reason that the animal could not be spayed and neutered at that point as well?
There shouldn't be.
They're too young at 8 weeks.
Well, it really goes by their weight as well. So they have to be a sufficient weight, at least for our department, to be able to anesthetize them. So that's the concern, is the anesthesia, and they're based on their weight and their age.
So what is that parameter for how early can a dog or cat be neutered?
I believe that dogs have to, they like for dogs to go through, but they have to go through, they like for them to go through a heat cycle usually before they neuter them or spay them.
And some people do. We do a lot of spay and neuters of puppies and kittens. It's not uncommon for our department to do so. We like to wait for them to be about a minimum of 2 pounds before we anesthetize them, and that's just to ensure that they're going to safely undergo the procedure.
2 pounds. Okay. Thank you.
And Commissioner Zolli, the language I think that was proposed was every breeder, purchaser, or other person coming into possession of an unchipped dog or cat is required within 30 days. I know that we did have a recommendation about the health certificate and the microchip matching, so that language could be incorporated in there if that's something that the board desired.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Okay, so the only thing that I see pop up as we talk about this is responsible pet owners are going to do this. Who is going to be out there enforcing this for those people who aren't doing it?
We would enforce it the same way we enforce the rabies and county tag. So you would have a citation that they wouldn't have the microchipping, which leads to one of the later subjects of irresponsible animal owners and citations. So you would enforce it the same way you do with rabies and county tag.
Okay, so Dana, let's be honest here, and Jim might have to come up and answer this question. I mean, how often are we chasing down people who don't have their animals registered or who aren't getting their rabies shots? I mean, how much time are we spending on that?
Jim Sweet, for the record, Marion County Animal Services Interim Director. So what we normally do is that we don't, if someone calls in directly a complaint and advise us that there's a citizen or an individual that has a pet that is unlicensed, it is a violation of our ordinance and we will make a visit to that person. Generally how it works is it's based on something else. We receive a complaint, whether it's excreta or the animal at large. When we come out, and if the animal is not current, we're going to issue a citation for rabies and county license. And if we were to do something like this with the microchips, we would probably add that as well. We do have a grace period for that when we issue a rabies or county license citation. Our goal is for them to become in compliance. So most people do. We give them 7 days to comply. If they comply, we don't send that citation to the courthouse. If they fail to do so, we send that citation to the courthouse and we go to court when it's time.
I understand the process, but what I'm asking is, I mean, let's be honest here. We have a whole lot of other things that we have to take care of. Is that one of our high priorities?
I can't say that it.
And I'm not trying to make our department look bad. I'm just trying to be realistic about this.
We don't actively look for them. We only respond.
Right.
Correct. At this point, when we receive a complaint, we respond based on
reactionary.
that. Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Zalek?
Okay, so with all due respect, I think this is almost like a no-brainer if you can put the information on the microchip, right? So the county, how much information can you put on the chip besides just ID and address?
So the microchip, the only information.
Tell you when the county license is up, if they have the rabies vaccine. Can those things be checked off on it or no?
So the information that's on the chip is simply just a numbers and sometimes letters, depending on the chip manufacturer. So what it does is when we scan an animal for a microchip, it sends a signal. It comes back with this information. We input that information in our system, and our system will have that other information, whether it's a county license and whatnot. If we don't have it in our system, we reach out to the provider of the microchip, which the animal should be registered through.
Right. So we have all the data. So this is almost kind of from my perspective, it's almost a no-brainer that you would want to chip everything, because then the chip would be the data point for you, and you could, it could be automated through our system to send out a letter. Hey, you need to renew your license. You need to renew your rabies. All of that stuff then becomes linked, and it actually becomes less effort on our code enforcement officers to, for us to have an automated system that would produce that information, right?
Correct. I can't say that it would not help in any way, because actually it would. It would assist with reuniting owners. So animals that have a microchip have a higher likelihood of being reunited with their owner, better yet said.
I'm not arguing any of that. What I'm actually saying is we put this ordinance in place, how do we enforce it? That's what I'm saying. Are we going to be active? Are we going to hire staff? Because if you do this, there are going to be people, they're going to be expecting us to be enforcing this, which means more staff to do this. Thank you, Mr. Minter.
Well, this reminds me of what was in the Florida statutes for a number of years about seat belts. And so for years it was considered a secondary offense, and they would not, a law enforcement officer would not pull you over just for that. They had to cite you for speeding or something else, and if as part of their citation for that you didn't have a seatbelt, then they would also cite you for that. So if, as Mr. Sweet was saying, that if in the course of our normal interactions, if a dog is running wild or something like that, or we get a complaint about a dog biting somebody, and then we discover that it's not microchipped, we could only enforce it under those circumstances, but we're not going to be going out and doing a dragnet for every unmicrochipped dog in the county. So I think that's the issue that...
Right, but every dog that got adopted in our county or sold would have a microchip. I mean, that's a long way over the course of a few years to being able to have that. Then on top of that, you'd be able to track those animals to owners, how many animals owners have. I mean, it would give you a lot of information over time, and you could accrue that information to make better decisions. It just gives you better data over the long haul, right? And it gives you something to go back on if they are not keeping up to date, and then we can cite them and more easily find out which owners are have a significant tendency not to follow the rules, right? And then those are the people we end up having trouble with, right? It gives you the data points and proof to show a judge later on, oh, well, they didn't every single year, you know, they were not in compliance of getting their license or taking care of the rabies issue or, you know, whatever else. And so data is typically a good thing, especially in this endeavor when we're trying to figure out where those animals go. And even if it does take us a little more research to find out where the animal's been over time, it still gives us a huge leg up if that animal has at least the original microchipping information.
And it would only be a one-time thing. Once you get the animal microchipped, you still have to keep up with your rabies and county tag information every year, every 3 years. But the microchip, and to answer your question,
And every time
Commissioner
I went
Bryant,
to the vet, it would get updated too, wouldn't it?
right. And that's part of the process that we do have people that don't necessarily, they'll update the information with us, but not for the chip. But there's no requirement that when you're issued a citation for rabies and county tag, you can pay it without actually getting the rabies and county tag. So there isn't a mechanism in place. Now, the judges do allow people that come in front of them, you know, hey, if you get into compliance and you can show proof, I'll dismiss a citation. But there isn't a requirement that you actually show that you've got it. Some people just pay the citation without getting the rabies and county tag. So that's, you know, one of the other things. But so the purpose of, you know, as I'm going through, I'm asked about where I am on the ordinance and writing. So there are certain things that I need direction on whether or not you want those included in a draft ordinance. So that was the purpose of bringing those issues. The next issue was the retail ban, the location of the sales of dogs and cats, and I gave you a variety of different languages. You can do a complete ban, you could grandfather in, you could allow stores, and you would also have to decide if you were going to exempt any organizations such as, you know, Vocal, Humane Society, any of those if they were to open a storefront. So I understand the chair's concerns. So if there's any direction on that one or any question about the options that I've given you or any additional questions you have about my research on that issue.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Dana today?
Are we scheduled for one-on-ones on this?
I'm scheduled with 2 of you for this afternoon.
Okay, if you could also add me to the list.
I've requested to get you on my calendar.
I think Nadja was having some difficulty getting the calendars with schedules, but I do believe there's 2 for this afternoon.
And Madam Chair, if I may, as I'm not going to be here at our next board meeting, I would request that this be tabled until our first meeting in April, at least.
That gives plenty of time to.
Plenty of time.
Can you go over, I mean, while you're here, Dana, can you go over, we'll meet on the, because I have some other questions on the retail sales, so we'll just continue to meet with you this afternoon, I believe, on that. But can we talk about the irresponsible animal owner process and what you've seen and what you're seeing in other ordinances, and have just a little bit of a broader conversation?
Sure, absolutely. So the language that I proposed as those options are the only other 2 counties that have irresponsible animal owner are Hernando and Pinellas. And you can see there's a little bit of a variation. Essentially what Pinellas County has is if you have so many citations within a 24-month period, you're deemed an irresponsible animal owner, you're given another citation, and then if you continue to have violations, you're deemed an irresponsible animal owner 2, and then the county can enjoin you from obtaining ownership of any additional animals for 3 or 5 years, depending on what the board would decide. It's very similar to the registry. Those numbers are exactly with the registry and enjoinment there. What it then allows is the irresponsible animal owner not to take any additional responsibilities. The language that you will see from Pinellas includes pretty much every citation that you would write: rabies and county tag, running at large, bite, any of those things. So in researching that, what I did is I kind of looked at the last 2 years, what are the types of citations that we are issuing as a county? In over 17 and 18, we issued about 550 citations. I don't have the numbers yet specifically from the clerk on how much we actually collected during that time. But you had about 450 citations that were people that only got 1 citation in the 2 years. Some of those are rabies and county tag, some are failed to get a microchip after a bite. Whether they came into compliance, not really sure. You only have about 76 people that got more than 1 citation offense date, so different days. You had about 76 that had 2 of those. And they're convictions, not adjudication withheld or dismissals. You had 4 individuals that had 4 or more, and you had 1 individual that had more than 5. So those people consistently have a lot of citations. So in looking at those, the language of Pinellas talks about offense date. We may go out and issue 6 citations at one time. So it's the idea of not that one time counting as 6 citations, but every multiple times that Animal Services goes out. Okay. The other language is considering that, and we've approached this, we have a lot of first offenses, second offenses already within our fine structure, and the county court judges require you have an actual conviction of the first offense before they will convict of a second offense. We've worked through that process because we were sometimes having the second citation actually coming before the first because of how they were filed. So we've worked through that process by holding back until we have a conviction of the first one before we go forward. So those are the type of numbers that you're seeing. I just wanted to kind of get an idea of how many people are you really talking about being irresponsible animal owners when it comes to the citations themselves. One of the other ideas that was proposed is the people that aren't paying the citations, because there are a lot that go unpaid. It doesn't count against your driver's license because it's a non-criminal civil infraction. And the idea would be, if by not paying those citations, could we also enjoin you from ownership? And the research completed by our office and Mr. Minner was that you could go that route if you wanted to. Pinellas County doesn't do any type of seizure. They just keep putting citation on after citation. And I don't know that that's really the route you want to take, because you're not ultimately fixing what the problem is. Like Jim mentioned, rabies and county tag is all about education. So you're hoping that people come into compliance. And the judges are very strict on, there's a reason why we have those in place. You don't want your animals running around not being vaccinated. And they do grant some extensions sometime to get people into compliance. That's the point of it. Some of the other ones with the dogs running at large, they are repeat offenders, and Animal Services is well aware of who those individuals are. So the irresponsible animal owner provision would affect some individuals. How many? Maybe 150.
So the good point about this, though, is it won't be specific to a particular animal, though, like our current code is today, right?
Right.
It'll be specific to an owner.
If that's how you want the language crafted.
Well, I think that that's part of the issue that we have on some of these multiple offenses. So I also think that, we should have some, I get why you would want to have different days, but I also think that there's probably a limit on that too. Like, so if we go out and write, more than 6 or 7 citations in one day, for me, that qualifies you just about as much, and maybe Jim can help us craft the right amount. I don't know if that's because you're having so many citations because they have, 2 or 3 dogs or cats, and, then they have 3 or 4 offenses per animal, and, you start getting a big list. But, I don't know if the number's 10, again, right. But that seems like a lot for one day.
What I was
qualify you probably for having some irresponsibility.
what I was typically seeing is if you had somebody that had multiple citations, it was they had 3 dogs, so they got rabies and counting tag for each dog, and then they had 3, control because the dogs were in the road or they went into the neighbor's yard, so they're getting 6 citations at one time. In the past, when I've looked at these numbers, I think you're getting maybe 20% of the citations actually paid. It has really not been a deterrent, and definitely on the repeat offenders. I mean, as I was going through the names...
The best thing we can do, though, I mean, especially if they have that many animals and they're not taking responsibility for them, especially after the first offense, and then they're not even going to pay their fines, then we can move to adjoin them, though.
Right. So, and then we would have the language that would have
that. I mean, we're going to do one-on-ones with Dana.
I'm going to just go ahead and say this, though. I am not going to support enjoining someone from being able to have animals because we go out and they don't have their county tag or their rabies shot. I mean, I think that if we're going to talk about going that route, that we should be talking about people who...
dog bites, cruelty, things more of that nature.
Animals that are dangerous, they're a danger to the people on property, they're a danger to people otherwise. And it's not that I support that activity, but I mean, I just think that we are going into a realm that I'm not quite sure that we should be stepping into.
I'm just asking the questions. I wasn't making a decision today. I want to understand what the process is. I care more, though, but I do care the fact that if you don't have a rabies vaccination and you can't control your animal on your property, that's a big deal.
Well, but what if you're not there and your animal just happens to get out and then we find out that you don't have that? Maybe it's just the county tag that they don't have. There are a lot of people in our community that don't realize that they have to have a county tag for their animal. I think some of this stuff there's actually should be being addressed as an educational component, not going into the realm of telling people that we're not going to let them have any more animals. I mean,
and that's why most of our people only have 1 offense versus 5.
So thank you for being with us today. We're going to look forward to those one-on-ones, and I wish they had happened before we got here today. So thank you. Next, I'm going to, well, Mr. Attorney, do you have anything else that you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, a couple of things real quick. I got a letter from an attorney last week representing Art Walker Construction. They went back to the board's action on approving a contract at the last board meeting. There were some questions about their performance, and so I just wanted to tell the board that back in the last year we had that settlement agreement with Art Walker, and so that settlement agreement resolved all the past issues with Art Walker and provided that going forward, like we had a contract for Art Walker on today's agenda, going forward the board would not use any of the problems that predated that settlement agreement as a reason to not approve a contract for Art Walker as long as they're the lowest bidder on a job going forward. So I've checked with Tracy, I've checked with Sean and Susan Olson, and since that settlement agreement we have not had issues with the performance of Art Walker, and Art Walker is not on any kind of probationary status with the county at this point. So you know, if just like basically the status they're in, that just like any other contractor, if we have an issue comes up, we'll deal with that when it comes up if there's a performance issue. And so I just wanted to mention that to the board. And then finally, some of you may have already heard this, but this week or just yesterday, I heard the board's aware that occasionally we use the services of Neighbors Giblin and Nickerson, and I got word yesterday that Bob Neighbors has passed away. Oh, no. And I've known Bob for more than 30 years. He was kind of the dean of local government attorneys in the state of Florida and kind of a father figure to many local government attorneys. And so they're going to be having a memorial service for him in Tallahassee on Saturday this week. But just want to let you know Bob was a very fine man, and he's going to be sorely missed. So that's all.
Our condolences to him and his family and those who mourn his passing. Yes. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mentor. Mr. Boyonis?
Good morning, Commissioners. The first item is 9A1, to give you an update on veteran services and Empowering Marion strategic plan.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jeffrey Askew, Veteran Services Director. As far as the administrative update as Veteran Services is concerned, we had our plan areas was outreach. And we had item number under customer service, item number 50. And our task was to expand our outreach in State Road 200 corridor and also the rural areas in our communities. And we also looked at which wasn't one of our items, home visits and the Veterans Exhibit Center. So far this year, we expanded our outreach to the State Road 200 corridor. I have a service officer there who have visited several gated communities and given briefs to nearly 300 veterans in those communities, such as Senior Wellness Center, Medical Health Center, Paddock Hill, Brookdale, Laredo's, and Marion Landing, and Pacifica Assisted Care Living Facility. We also have given briefs to the VFW home in Fort McCoy, to the veterans there, Summer Glen Veterans Association, which is located off 484 and I-75, the Military Officers Association, and also the Marion County Veterans Council, and one of our largest veterans organization, American Legion Post 284 in Bellevue. Our remaining plans for this year is to recycle the brief that we did the previous year to the outreach in the rural areas consisting of Marion Oaks, Silver Spring Shores, the Ocala National Forest, the American Legion and Dunellen, and also the Bellevue Branch Library. We visit veterans in their homes and widowers of veterans who have mobility challenges, who cannot make it to our office. I send individuals to their homes. So far, we have conducted 14 home visits for those who have verifiable mobility challenges. We go to their homes for visit to ensure that they file the proper paperwork to receive benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Lastly, we have our old building. We're in the process of turning into a Veterans Exhibit Center, which we're planning to have open on the 30th of this month for the 175th anniversary. And what that's going to consist of, we're going to be displaying items from the 6 branches of the military, consisting of Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard, and finally the Merchant Marines. So it'll be something interesting for the county that we don't have here. And that will be open the evening of the anniversary for visitation. And if I may, I just want to share with you all that one of the most important documents that a veteran can have is their discharge proof of service, which is the Department of Defense Form 214, better known as DD 214, because you cannot receive any services from the VA unless you have proof of services. And those who served during World War II, it wasn't the Department of Defense then, it was the War Department. So their proof of service would be a War Department, which is a WDG Form 30. And those forms are essential to receive any form of benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs. That's all I have as far as my update is concerned. Are there any questions?
Well, we appreciate the service that you provide to our citizens. What is it, 45,000 within Marion County? 1 out of 7 residents in Marion County is a veteran. And again, thank you so much for your continuous outreach, and that is a proactive outreach that you are doing as well. So thank you, and I'm sure that's an ongoing process.
Yes, it is.
It's not ongoing. A check the box, we've done it, and we're not going to do it again.
No, it's ongoing.
All
we
right.
completed our round, and we start over again. And we're always open for any community, any assisted living facility, nursing home that has veterans there. If they call our office needing us to come there to give a brief for benefits, we are more than happy to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Askew.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Commission item 9B is bringing back to you the road alignment through the Clifton Mine. Last discussion, you selected the alignment to go through that property, and you had a question whether we should use a bridge or we should use fill. Tracy and the consultant, county engineer and the consultant, they looked at the long-term maintenance cost and replacement cost in the future, and they have a recommendation for you.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner
I'll
Bryant.
make a motion to approve alternate 3A.
3A,
Which one is it?
It's the
Without the
without the
bridge.
bridge.
The fill.
Yeah.
Second.
I mean, it's a difference of $10,000, or I think that was the difference.
Million.
Yeah. Oh, 10
10 million.
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 Dollars.
I was
Almost
gonna say, wait a
$11 million.
Yeah, I was gonna say 10,000.
Sorry.
I didn't see.
I knew I had said that wrong.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Bryant to approve alternate 3A.
I seconded it.
Let me, is it 3A? Alternate 3A without the bridge. Let me be very specific.
Full 3A, so.
Yeah, so let me be very specific, without the bridge.
And the large cost difference, it was the future replacement of a bridge.
And
That's
that was
what-
why I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that motion is by Commissioner Bryant, second by Commissioner Moore. Do we have any further discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you for coming forward anyway. Would you like to add anything else?
Chairman, just for the record, because I did say a few words, Tracy Straub, County Engineer.
Thank you. Okay, very good. Committee items. Mr.
Before you go to
Yes.
committee items,
Yes.
I don't know if we skipped this on purpose, item 1G.
Item 1G. I probably did. I was working off of two different.
That's the presentation of
Oh,
the
that's right.
public service
I
announcement.
did miss that.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you like, we can do it now.
Sure. Thank you for bringing me back.
Okay, Chairman Stone and I, we had the opportunity to visit Central Florida Coalition of MPOs, and Polk County made a presentation on pedestrian safety. It was very impactful and very effective. We were hoping we can share it during the TPO meeting, but that didn't happen. So at least I would like for you all to see this announcement. And even at our level, at the county level, in the future, Polk County is open. If we want to use this announcement and modify it to our community, they are more than happy to work with us and allow us to use it. We have, Jared is on.
A pedestrian hit by a car going at 30 miles per hour has an 80% chance of survival. If the car is going 50 miles per hour, the chance of survival is only 20%. Speed kills. Driving slower can be the difference between life and death. Sign the pledge at pledgetoslowdown.com.
I think there's another one.
There's one more.
I know, but if I don't hit any lights and get stuck behind a train, I'll make it.
This is my Nana. This is my husband.
This is my mom.
Everyone matters to someone.
Pledge to slow down and drive safely.
I think they're very impactful. And
Especially with all what we are seeing recently. I mean, there has been a lot of pedestrian accidents and pedestrian death in Marion County. I think we need to make an effort in making those announcements and sharing this information. If it can save one person, that's one person saved. We slow down a little bit and pay attention to the road.
So, will we show this at TPO? Will we get this over to the TPO as well to make sure that all members see that?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay.
We'll do that.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Is there any way that we could incorporate that into our public safety campaign? I mean,
We
could we
can.
get permission to use those and actually probably have some of those played in our viewership?
Yes, Commissioner. We can do that.
Excellent. Do we need a motion for that?
Public service announcements as part of our public
Yes.
service announcements.
Yes.
I think that is.
Just consensus with that direction is fine, and we will reach out to Polk County and make sure we.
Excellent.
Madam Chair, if I may, I want to add, and I'm sure your legislative people are on top of this, there's two bills filed this year that will prohibit public service announcements from any elected official once elections start. Fortunately, that's kind of generic, and doesn't have any elected officials in it, but I don't know what's going to happen and where that bill's going, but
Okay.
Looks like I'll be the only one that'll be able to make any
Yes.
Any stuff this next year?
They shut the whole process down. It's been interesting to kind of follow that bill.
Very good.
I'll be the only one not running for office.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. So very good. And thank you, Mr. Boynes, for bringing me back to this because these were very impactful.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now go to committee items. Mr. Elsperman.
I have item 10E, Madam Chairman, if you want to cover the other ones.
Okay, so we have, can we do these all in one motion or do we need them all individually?
Well, I can just tell you that you can do all 1A through D if that's
I'll move 10A
appropriate.
through D.
So we'll take a motion for 10A through D as approval by Commissioner Moore.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Zalek. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. And then 10E.
In East Silver Spring Shores Special Taxing District, Patricia Vallegra received the appropriate votes.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion by Commissioner Bryant, second by Commissioner Zalek. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Commissioners, we have several items for action under 11, notation for action with various dates.
Okay.
You've had a chance to look at those.
I'll move for approval of 11A. Hold on a minute.
Do we have a problem with any of these dates?
I do.
Okay.
On the May 1st dates, my dad is his ashes are going to be buried in Arlington, and I'll be traveling to DC for that this week, if that can possibly be moved up. If not, I understand, but I won't be there.
Okay.
That's, we have 3 public hearings for road assessment.
May 1st.
So we will look at a different date.
Okay.
If
We'll
that's
get you
fine
the-
with the board.
Sure.
Yeah, I
That's
will.
fine.
Can we get,
I'll move for approval of 11A and 11B.
okay, we got a motion by Commissioner Bryant for 11A and 11B, second by Commissioner Moore.
Making sure, yes.
Okay.
Although I won't be here for 11A.
What?
Just getting married.
Oh, that's right.
But that's part of our board meeting day.
I know.
What,
Yeah.
is that,
And I think that that's something that we need to, that's got a time constraint on it, right?
was that the May 1st?
No,
No,
the
Tuesday, March 19th.
Doesn't matter.
March
It's 10
19th.
a.m. It's
Okay.
during the board meeting.
Board meeting.
So, move for approval 11A, 11B.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bryant, second by Commissioner Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Going back to the May,
I'll move to table 11C, D, and E.
Second.
we got a motion to table 11C, D, and E by Commissioner Zalek, second by Commissioner Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that motion is those items are tabled.
They will be on the next agenda
Next
for a
Okay,
date.
very good, for alternate dates. Okay, very good. Commissioner items. We'll start with Commissioner Gold.
All right. I've got several, actually. I like that state statute that's coming up for I think that's great, and I think it's a great idea. Watching the PSA that they have, and I was kind of thinking there, since I got hit by a car at 55 miles an hour, I think I have a pretty good percentage rate then. So I'd be over 20. That was in 94. Things I want to bring to you. If you're aware of the Purple Heart signs that the school system, I don't know if the school was doing it or exactly who was doing it before, they've ceased that project. They do have 2 signs left. I'm going to purchase one myself and sponsor it down at the City of Bellevue, Bellevue City Hall. And I'd like to ask permission from the board. I was wanting to put it on there, sponsored by the Bellevue City Commission and Marion County Board of County Commissioners. No individual names, just put our group. If nobody has a problem with that, of me doing it, there shouldn't be any cost to the taxpayers or to any of us.
Well, thank you.
If anybody has a problem with it, let me know. The second was the animal adoption fees. I'm very happy to see that this week that Jim was able to stop the fees or put 0 fees this week because the shelter is full, and got a little took something away from our meeting with Alachua County commissioners, that they've adopted that, and I think it's a good idea. And by I emailed Jeannie during this to find out, by statute the director, is that correct, can reduce the fees as needed. And I think it's a good idea that he reduces them, especially when they're down. Anything we can do to reduce the numbers in our
We've been practicing that, haven't we, since we did the change?
Yeah, there's been no, it was not. I know I checked last week. I was going to sponsor a couple, and it was at 50, and then sometimes we do 14. They were going to do 17 this month for St. Patrick's Day, but they've reduced it to 0. So I think it's a good practice they're doing. And last thing, I went to the landfill and took 3/4 of a ton of stuff there Monday. All the staff there was great. They were working everything through, so I can't see out there. So George and your staff out there, they did a wonderful job. It was very efficient for the crowds that were there. And the last thing, Employee of the Month, I've talked about that a few times before, and like to kind of see us start a Employee of the Month recognition where they come up here and they get an Employee of the Month award, maybe a plaque or whatever else we can do, even if it's something that the county administrator can look at. But I think it would be a good idea for us to recognize the Employee of the Month. I know it was done in the 80s. Mine's up there on my wall, but if I think it's a good thing that we recognize Employee of the Month. But there would have to be a system that the county administrator would have to find out to make sure it's fair and everything.
We have been looking at some ideas, Commissioner, and how we can do this. We have a draft of a policy, how it can be done. I can have Amanda go talk to you one-on-one and get your input, or if you want to discuss it now, we can too.
And it might even help with the our award that we give, the once-a-year award. It might be a criteria of adding to that. I just remember it, and I thought it was a good thing. It's always nice to recognize our employees. I think what Keith did today was awesome, just amazing.
Thank you, Commissioner Gold. And so the adoption fees this month at the Animal Services is how much?
Waived.
Exactly.
Yep.
I just wanted to put that back out there. Animal fees for adoptions this month is at 0. And
or weekend. I mean, it depends.
Ms. Rickman?
They're not for the full month. We reduced the adoption fees for the month during the St. Patrick's Day holiday, but for the next 3 days, they have been waived.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Well,
they're $17 through the
Yes.
holiday. They're waived right now because we're full.
Yes.
So we appreciate helping get our shelter emptied. Commissioner Zalek.
I have a dog appointment board. Actually talked to Mr. Leedy, and he accepted my invitation to be on the dog classification board, so I'll be appointing him. I need a motion.
So moved. Right, that was good.
What's that?
So that's good. That's a good show.
Hey, listen, everybody can find a way to work together on something.
Yeah.
You got to find common ground somewhere.
That's very respectful.
Work across the aisles.
So we've got a motion by who?
Commissioner Moore?
Commissioner Moore.
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Bryant. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Leedy. We welcome you and thank you for your service. Anything else?
You're going to talk about the Washington?
Go right ahead.
So I'll share part of our trip. Thank you, commissioners, for continuing to allow us to go and advocate on behalf of Marion County to the nation's capital. We were there both for our veterans and for NACO. I sit on the EELU committee, and we continue to look at energy, how it's working across our nation. The great thing about I think the process is that our energy production in many of our states is up across the nation, and more Americans are getting to be able to use that fuel as well as export that fuel. There are challenges with the Army Corps and permitting process and ports around the country, including Washington State and some other places for LNG and other things, but the committee continues to work on it and can pass, hopefully get great legislation passed to continue our energy exports. The other big item continues to be the waters of the U.S. The comment period runs through April 15th, so we'll be expecting those comments, Tracy, as we work toward getting and making sure that we have a great policy. NACO's position and the counties around the country are to eliminate all man-made ditches from the waters of the U.S. regulation because navigable waterways and other things fall under other categories and can be regulated and permitted through that process. They don't need to be a part of the waters of the U.S. If you remember a couple years back during the Obama rule, they were going to regulate all man-made ditches, including stormwater possessions. So, of course, everyone that had a road, our national forest, including, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of miles of railroad tracks because anything that had a swale on it, if you look at a railroad track, right, I mean, all of that would have been regulated under the waters of the U.S., and the EPA would have had regulation power, and the Army Corps would have had permitting power over those items. We've defeated that. President Trump put a stay on that process and reopened the process. And so we as a county have been working with counties across the country to improve that, to make sure that the waters of the U.S. make sense. The problem with it is that there's dissent decrees on certain states, about 26 states that are still under the 1986 rule. And there are other states like Florida that are under the 2015 rules of the waters of the U.S. And so eventually, I'm guessing the Supreme Court's going to rule. Scalia put out an opinion before his passing, and that is basically the guideline of what I think the departments are going to use. We had both the EPA and the Army Corps in our committee meetings talking about how they were going to implement and look at these rules, and they're probably going to have over 1 million comments to review, so it'll still take a year or two before they got through all of those comments. But I just want you to know we're working on that process. We're advocating for the Marion County and the state of Florida, making sure that the waters of the U.S. doesn't become a burdensome regulation, but it does what it's supposed to do, and that's continue to make sure the waterways of America are open for navigable use and that they're not causing pollution to upstream or downstream. So, I mean, that's the fundamental views, but we certainly don't need the regulation they were looking at in order to accomplish that. So that was mostly on my plate this weekend and what we accomplished, part of what we accomplished. So.
Thank you for the update on that. And it was a lot of meetings and a lot of information. So do you have anything else, Commissioner Zalek?
Just on our veterans, I think we're continuing to make great progress with the VA. And we continue to meet with them. They have our application for the state nursing home. We're on both the federal and state priority. Madam Chair, she did a great job advocating on behalf of our commission in order to try to see what things we could do from a federal standpoint, as well as we're going to be advocating on the state to get funding for our nursing home, clinic, all the things that we're continuing to make sure that we're the best place, not only in the state of Florida, but maybe in the country for veterans to come and call home. We want to make sure our heroes know that they're welcome here. And Madam Chair, I thought you did a splendid job in every department, in every meeting, talking to our representatives on behalf of our community and our region's veterans.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Zalek. Commissioner Moore?
Well, first, I'd like to call out somebody in the audience. The CalStar Banner sent Dave Schlenker today, which you read his humorous article, so it's going to be interesting to see how he reports on our meeting today, whether we're going to have some humor in our meetings, but it should be a lot livelier maybe than some of the other times that we read it where it just says, hey, this is what happened. Maybe there's going to be some humor added to it. So welcome, Dave. Thank you for being here.
Are you going to say something funny?
I know not to quit my day job.
Okay.
Anyway. Also, just wanted to go over briefly, hopefully we can we're in maybe the next month or two going to get together the future of transportation in Florida. I'm still hoping that we can get that set up so we can have a seminar, because there is some really great things coming down, which also we'll mention that TPO. We're going to try and get the TPO involved in that in the city and the state, but we need to keep on working on that. Again, that
we are working on it.
Yeah, we are working on it, but it's still coming. I want to let this board know it's still coming. It's just, with a lot of the things that were going on, we're kind of waiting till our calendars kind of clear a little bit better so everybody can be there.
And it involves a lot of people.
Yeah, and it involves a lot of people, yes. So initially I thought, hey, we'll just have the seminar, and then, there's a lot of moving parts to it.
Thank you.
So.
Anything else, Commissioner Moore?
Thank you to our public safety, all of our first responders for keeping us safe every day. Thank you to all of our employees for doing an awesome job every day.
Thank you. Commissioner Bryant?
I got nothing.
Okay. I have just a few items. Following up on Commissioner Zalek's comments, we did spend several days in D.C. recently. We got in very late last night, actually, coming straight into this meeting. But we did have some really good meetings. We also attended some really great workshops through the National Association of Counties. And I would also share with you that we will give you a more intense and update on what we learned. Both Ms. Rickman as well as Mr. Boyones, I'm getting it there. We all broke up. We attended different workshops so that we could bring back a lot of information to be able to share with you. And so it was very beneficial. On April the 4th, there will be a behavioral health learning event. I spoke to you very briefly, I think at our last meeting, about a workshop that was being put together, and the hospital district has taken a strong lead, and I've been attending a lot of different visits around 2 different counties looking at how they deal with behavioral issues and the opioid issue. And this workshop is actually coming as a learning event, and again, it will be on April the 4th. Lutheran Services, which is the state provider of the funds where our dollars flow down, will be a part of the panel, as well as Meridian, LifeStream, the Marion County Health Department, the hospital district, and the centers on how we deal with behavioral issues pertaining to opioid addiction, how we treat, and the various fundings that's available. So I really encourage us all to be present at that. It's going to be from approximately 10 to noon on April the 4th at CF. So when you see that invite come in through Naja, I'd ask that you give it special attention if you could. I look forward to continuing our comments to our elected officials, which will be taking place in this upcoming week, talking about our legislative priorities and obtaining funding. As Commissioner Zalek did say, the VA in Washington has the money available for us, and we need our state to allocate all the funds necessary, and that could be as much as $22.5 million. So as we're advocating this week in Tallahassee, we're going to also be asking for some assistance from the ground level, from some additional communities. And I'm talking about the veterans, on behalf of the veterans, with it being VA advocates, I'm going to say, which would be everybody in Marion County. So more information is going to come forward as we really kick into high gear on a campaign to really secure our funding. Commissioner Moore and I had an opportunity this last Saturday, I believe, as Right Way Little League kicked off their spring season, as well as we did a ribbon cutting at Ralph Russell Park. We were provided a thank you for our support, and this is for all of us as the board, so I wanted to bring that and share that, and we'll find a nice place to place this. And it was really sweet to see all of the little leaguers out there from all ages. There were about 5 different teams and their parents. Lastly, we have a wonderful event going on in Marion County this weekend. It's the Live Oak Equestrian event, one of the largest international eventing that will be taking place out at Live Oak, and it's out on Highway 40 on 110th Avenue. So I invite the community to be a part of that, and you can Google it to get additional details. And with that, that's all my public comment for me as announcements, and I'll now open it up for any additional public comment from our...
You want me to move 12B?
Yes, could we get a motion on 12B?
So moved.
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Zalek, second by Commissioner Bryant. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Commissioner calendar, we've already shared, and now we'll open for additional public comment. Anyone in the audience for closing? If not, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Nothing, Joe?
Oh, man.
Safety video.
See ya.